In a land far, far away, behind a pair of microphones, two generic guys said that most novel of phrases. We should start a podcast. And after months of postponing and rescheduling, they're finally ready to make it everyone's problem. The Dork Place presents Shit I Love with People I Like. New episode every Wednesday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, all of the goods. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Shit I Love with People I Like. I'm your host, AJ, and of course, with me, as always, is Chase. And I'm going to kick it over to you, Chase, to introduce yourself, but this time I'm going to do it straight with the icebreaker. It is the month of May, and we have survived 9 episodes now without really talking Star Wars too much. But today we're going to break that and talk about Andor. I want to know, especially with all this new information and stuff, what is your favorite era in Star Wars? As you introduce yourself, what would you say is your favorite Star Wars era?
Well, hello, I'm Chase at ForwardIntoTheBlack on those social media platforms, and my favorite era of Star Wars is what we're going to talk about. The new greatest saga, the Death Star saga. When people talk about, like, what should you watch Star Wars in, like, release order, chronological order, it's like, no, you watch Andor, Rogue One, and A New Hope, and then you're done. That's the saga now. Everything else is fluff at that point.
You know, I mean, honestly, I agree. Like, for the longest time, so if you'd have asked me up until maybe yesterday, like up until Andor finished, I would have said the prequel era. That was always my favorite era growing up. You know, loved the books that I read in that era. I love Qui-Gon Jinn. It was a big deal. And then, but now in this world with Bad Batch, Rebels, Andor, you know, like Rogue One, Catalyst, all of these amazing pieces, like everything we've got, I'm like, you know what? I kind of think this is the best. And probably the most, like you finished it with A New Hope. It's like the most in line with A New Hope is this era.
Yeah, it is. So I love the prequels. We're roughly the same age, so we were about the same age as the prequels were coming out, and I was a day one prequel defender, and still am, like to a large degree. I have no problem being an adult and saying to children on the internet, like, I lived through this, I love these movies. Revenge of the Sith is not as good as you think it is. It's a beautiful movie. It really is. It's an emotional movie. I cry every time I watch it. It's not a cinema masterpiece. It's very far from that. But you're right. Like, I think that this post Revenge of the Sith to I'm gonna be a little bit like cheeky here and say Revenge, like the end of Revenge of the Sith, so Darth Vader putting on the mask, to Empire Strikes Back, is the most interesting and well written and thought out era of Star Wars. I think, to some people's credit, there's less mysticism, there's less fantasy, and there's less wonder in this era of Star Wars. But if you're on the internet complaining about the writing of Star Wars, and you're looking at the post-Return of the Jedi era, the pre-Revenge of the Sith era, and that includes High Republic, Old Republic, Dawn of the Jedi, stuff like that. If you're looking at New Jedi Order stuff from the expanded universe, like, you will get that mysticism, you will get that wonder, but you're also going to get the muddy writing and the sloppy dialogue and conversations. You're going to get your edgelord Darth Banes, you're going to get your wonky Anakins, you'll get Luke Skywalker doing backflips over 1,000 stormtroopers. and like as much as I love the sequels and like stuff like Resistance, like you do get some like convoluted storytelling and a little bit less world building. So yeah, I do think that this new where we used to have post Return of the Jedi, I think post Revenge of the Sith era is it's the best. Like it's just like the writing in Bad Batch is incredible. The writing in Rebels is incredible. The writing in Andor is unparalleled. And yeah, it's just if you grew up with the original trilogy, it's like the best time to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, it's just one of those where I also think that living in the times that we do makes this era even more like interesting to watch. Like I felt myself there's this weird so I went back and I rewatched Rogue One as soon as the credits rolled on Andor season or episode 12. And there is this throughout Andor and also through Rogue One, there is this like thread of hope in the sense that it's an ironic hope and the way that we actually mean irony, that we know that everything that these people are dying for matters. We know that they win.
Yeah.
We know that they win. And there is something inspiring about that, especially when we are living in the rise of an authoritarian nightmare. Like there is something to believe that maybe even if you don't see the sunrise on that day, that what you're doing matters.
Yeah. And I think what Rogue One and Andor especially do so well, and we can get into it, you know, as we go along, is again, I love the prequels. These are better prequels. Like these fit in, like Rogue One and Andor fit into the original trilogy so much better. Like there's not really any threads of how does this fit into Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back. Like, you know, this line of like, you know, with the prequel trilogy, we have things like Leia remembering Padme. We have, you know, the pod, you know, Darth Vader being a pod racer and stuff like that. And like, there's like great scenes, but like, there's lots of issues, like, you know, Obi-Wan, you know, and Yoda not knowing who R2-D2 is in the original trilogy, you know, stuff like that, where it gets a little murky into how like the prequels fit into the original trilogies, whereas Andor and Rogue One fit in seamlessly into the original trilogy. And like, if we could go back in time and have a magical device that could move things around, if this were the prequel trilogy, no one would have an issue with the prequels. We would not be we wouldn't have had the discussions we had in the 2000s if this is what the prequels ended up being.
Oh God, I'm gonna save my opinions on the prequels for another day, for another topic.
Sure.
Because I can go on and on about it, but I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, I can too. We're not here to talk about the prequels. We're not here to talk about the prequel trilogy. We're here to talk about the original trilogy prequels.
There we go. Now, before we get into all of that, I want to go ahead and hit This Week in Geek again, and just hit some of the things that popped up around the internet this week that I remembered that we can kind of talk about. So I know for everybody who cares, today, if you don't have the pre-order right, is the drop for Doom: The Dark Ages. Chase, tell me about that, because I know you're a pretty big fan of Doom 2016.
So I've not played Dark Ages. I'm very excited to play the Dark Ages. If I'm opening up the Xbox app right now, it is showing the shield and the bloody mace of the Doomslayer. I know that this is a prequel to Doom 2016 and Eternal. From people who have been playing it, I've heard nothing but good things about Doom: The Dark Ages. It seems like it is more Doom. It is more exciting Doom. They have amped up the action even further in this one, which you think is pretty hard to do after Eternal. But yeah, I'm excited to play this. I'll probably install it and give it a shot before I leave for the weekend. But yeah, one of my favorite things I saw was a video of someone being mad about Doom: The Dark Ages, in a kind of like cheeky way. It was like, you know what? I hate Doom. You know why? Because Doom is an unbullyable franchise. Like, they have been making games for 30 years, and none of them are bad. And it's like, if you play Doom and you say it's not fun, you're lying. And it was just like it was just one of those things. It was there goes my alarm to wake up. It's just one of those things. I think it's hilarious that like it's right. It's just like Doom is a video game as video game. And it's like, if you love video games and you have if you get any enjoyment out of first-person shooters, Doom is such an incredible series. Like, even Doom 3, which is like the redheaded stepchild of the franchise, is still a very good game. Like, it's not the fast-paced action from Doom and Doom 2 or Doom 2016 and Eternal, but it is like, it's a good horror game. Like, it takes the Doom formula, turns it into a horror game, and it's a good horror game. So like there's just nothing bad about Doom, and so I'm very excited to play Doom: The Dark Ages.
Okay, so and I've been seeing nothing but good reviews about it too. As someone who has yet to play any of the new Dooms, should I start with the prequel?
I think based on what I've seen and like talking to people who didn't play 2016 and they jumped straight into Eternal, like the story is so secondary to Doom. Like, there is a story. There has always, since the original game, there has always been a story.
There's a guy in hell, right?
Rip and tear. That is
much.
that is the story. Is to rip and tear. So I think if you are just looking to play Doom and you want to just be current with it, it seems like Doom: The Dark Age is perfectly fine, like, entry point. Like, in the same way Eternal, like, where I personally enjoyed aspects of Doom 2016 more than Eternal is still a phenomenal and like unbelievable experience. You do not need to play 2016 to play Eternal, and it seems very much like you do not need to play the Doom: The Dark. You don't need to play Eternal to play Doom: The Dark Ages.
Nice. Okay, also dropping today, also in a couple of hours, I assume at some point, probably during this podcast, we're going to be getting the first official, like, full trailer for James Gunn's Superman. I'm a huge Superman fan, so that's kind of a big deal to me. Curious to see where that movie's going to go. Do you care at all about, I know you're not a Marvel person, do you care at all about DC?
No, not really. However, I like the idea that it seems like, with the exception of would you call it the Snyderverse? Like, it seems like most of the Superman movies have like been pretty good. Like, there was the one with Kevin Spacey as like Lex Luthor, right? That like people like, I think it was Man of Steel that people tended to enjoy a lot. And then you had like the Christopher Reeves movies. I remember watching the Christopher Reeves movies as a kid, and I did enjoy those. But yeah, like, it's like, like, superheroes aren't my thing.
You know, one thing that I was gonna say, and this is to tie it to the Star Wars of it all. So David Cornsweet, who's playing Superman, James Gunn has talked a lot about how like, he's just a dork, like, of a human being. Like, he's your stereotypical, like, David Cornsweet's the guy who would read the dictionary for fun, like, to try to find a new cool word. And he's like, just brings a quirkiness to Superman. But one of the things that he also brings is Cornsweet is a huge Star Wars fan. Mm-hmm. And he's been interviewed a couple times talking about, like, him, like, try like we all do, trying to use the Force to move stuff when he was a kid, and how cool would it be to have a lightsaber? And I thought about it, and this is the tiniest little tangent. That feels incredibly Superman to me, because for all of the wild powers that Superman has, he doesn't have the Force, right? He doesn't have a lightsaber. And I imagine the idea of like this super strong, Kal-El Clark Kent sitting on his bed trying to move shit from across the room with his mind and it not working. And I just find that sense of wonder to be kind of charming. So.
Yeah. And like, I'm not like oblivious to comics and superheroes in general, but like that is something that I do find, like, and especially like later renditions of Superman, is like Clark. Like I remember as a kid watching Lois and Clark, like the '90s TV show, the '90s like TV show adaptation, and I thought that was really good. And it was like the nerdiness of Clark Kent, and it is like a reflection of like he's a literal alien. Like he has trouble fitting into like human norms. And I like the idea that this new actor is kind of a dork and probably has some trouble fitting into certain situations, and can bring that to the character of Clark Kent at least. So yeah, I think that's cool. I think it's a good route. It's a good casting choice.
And I'm curious to see when the trailer comes out, especially for people like you who maybe aren't the biggest fans. What will that trailer have to offer for people like you to bring you to want to see the movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not against watching superhero movies, but it's just something I like don't go out of my way to do. Like, I people have been talking a lot about Thunderbolts, and like, I might go see that at some point. We'll see. I might wait for it to come to streaming. But like, I watched Deadpool and Wolverine, and I know that's like the basic like superhero movie of like last year. Like, but like it was fun. Like I don't think it was trying to tell a particularly like prominent and important message. It was just to have fun in the theaters, and that's exactly what it delivered, and I enjoyed that. So. We'll see with this new trailer. I didn't see the other trailer that I know a lot of people were kind of freaking out about, but I didn't see that. So I'll have to watch this new one.
All right. Also, so I weirdly enough never hear anything out of PAX anymore, but one big thing that does tie together a couple of my interests is that Magic the Gathering is starting to fully release all their spoilers for their collaboration with Final Fantasy, just so people know, if you're at all curious. Not only are they cool like collector's pieces, but they are doing a full standard set of cards from across Final Fantasy history. They've also got 4 commander decks surrounding Final Fantasy 6, 7, 10, and 14, and each individual deck just centers on one of those games and features characters from that. And yeah, so we're getting like, the Clouds and the Tidus's and the Noctises, and I can't believe I just said Tidus like it was normal when it's wrong.
Tidus
for the win.
Yeah, I did. I think I said there was a lightning card, wasn't there, that they had? Yeah. So are they not doing a 13 deck?
So what it is that the main set that will be like legal within standard competitive for 2 years, and is the cards that they're printing that you buy at Walmart and stuff. Those will have everyone from all Final Fantasies. Like, for example, there is a 15, so there's a card called Sid Timeless Artificer, and there are 15 different arts for Sid, because Sid is of course in every Final Fantasy. He's just not physically in one. Like, we don't physically have a sprite for him.
Sure.
So that's why he doesn't get a card art. But every other art of Sid is featured on one of the versions of that card. And then it breaks the rule of Magic and says, a deck may have any number of cards named Sid Timeless Artificer. So you could have all 15 versions of Sid in a deck if you so chose.
All right. Yeah, it's been the last time I played Magic the Gathering was probably 2004 or 5. So it's been a long time. Like, commander decks were not a thing when I played Magic the Gathering. Like, you just had a deck of cards. It was like you built red decks or black decks or blue decks or white decks or green decks and stuff like that. People would get specific. Like, I remember when Wyvern decks were becoming really popular and stuff like that. So I know the rules of Magic have wildly changed comparatively. Like, the cards just look different now. So it's not something I want to dump money into, so I probably won't get back into it.
That's kind of how I feel too. That's the one thing I do enjoy about Commander, and I won't waste time talking about it, but Commander is a casual format. Cards never rotate. I have decks that I've had for years. You can still just pick them up and play. It's a more casual format. Multiplayer, stuff like that. So there are ways that I will probably pick up the Final Fantasy X related cards and the Commander deck just for collection purposes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just because. But yeah, if you're interested in that kind of thing, that is something kind of cool going on. I also wanted to highlight, because I think this is really cool, they announced that Kristen Ritter will be returning in season 2 of Daredevil Born Again as Jessica Jones. So in the when Netflix made their series of Marvel shows, Kristen Ritter played Jessica Jones in what is perhaps one of the best single seasons of superhero television. Like, the first season of Jessica Jones is immaculate. It's wonderful. It's the story of a rape survivor getting revenge when her rapist comes back for her. Essentially. Like, that is at its purest form what it's about. And it's so good. And so to see her come back is really cool, because she was really good, even if that show went off the rails for a while.
Mm-hmm. It seems like Marvel's on a little bit of a comeuppance or like a resurgence, because like I know like a lot of people were really positive with Daredevil Born Again, and with Thunderbolts coming out, people really enjoyed that movie. And like, say what you will, like Daredevil and Wolverine was a huge success for Marvel. I know people have like critical issues with that movie, and that's fine. But yeah, like it seems like I guess, is it like the phase 4 slump of Marvel seems to be at an end, and they're kind of getting back to, because like Agatha All Along was last year, right? And people also really like that.
So even Kevin Feige has said that Marvel is focused more on quality over quantity. He said for a while there they were kind of oversaturating their own product, and they were just chugging out these things that didn't that they shouldn't have been putting out. And so yeah, there has been a conscious effort on Marvel's part to put out better work, or work they consider to be better than others. I'm curious to see where we're going with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, only because there's only 2 ways that Doomsday goes: bringing back Robert Downey Jr. to play a different role, another iconic villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, will it be received well by fans, or will they see the nostalgia as what it possibly is?
I know it's not a one-to-one comparison. Is this not the same as Andy Serkis playing Kino Loy and Snoke?
No, in the sense that sorry, it took me a second to see what you were saying. Snoke is a CGI character and is like a completely separate character. Like if you didn't tell someone that Andy Serkis voiced Snoke and they just watched like all of Star Wars, chances are high they would never put two and two together. Even back to back, the Kino Loy and Snoke are the same person. Whereas this is very much Robert Downey Jr.'s face, like he is physically playing.
Is Doctor Doom going to take his mask off though, or do we?
I assume, because otherwise, what the fuck is the point of having him be Robert Downey Jr.? You know what I mean?
Like the same way that you have Pedro Pascal be the Mandalorian.
Unless, I mean, but if that were the deal, I doubt they would make it as big of a thing as it is.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things, and this is very much an outsider perspective. Is we've seen this a couple times where like people play different characters, and you're right, like Kino Loy and Snoke by Andy Serkis are two different people. Keller and Beck and Jar Jar Binks are like different people, and one is CGI, one is not. Mark Hamill plays a couple people in Star Wars at this point, but like I know that there are people that have said like there are comic runs where like Iron Man becomes Doom, and like it's like, I mean, that's like the messiness of like the Marvel comics and all of the different threads and like, multiverses and stuff like that.
This is one of those where this is me going, let's not go down this rabbit hole, because I
totally get it.
We could, and I don't want to, because if I start, then I won't stop and we won't get to Andor.
That's totally fair.
So
yeah, I will say from an outsider perspective, as someone who like has only seen Infinity War and Endgame, and I watched the first Iron Man, and again, I'm not going to speak to the quality of those films. It's just they don't do it for me.
Yeah.
And it seems like we'll move on from this. When I saw the clips of, I think it was San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con, whatever it was, where Robert Downey Jr. comes out with the Doom mask and pulls it off, and it's the reveal that he's going to play Dr. Doom. It seems like the people who paid money to go to a comic convention for comic news were very excited about that fact. Yeah. So from an outsider perspective, it seems like clearly fans of the MCU like Robert Downey Jr., or at least a lot of fans like Robert Downey Jr., and they want to see him back, since he doesn't make it out of Endgame. Do we always want to give... Do the masses always know what they want, though? No. To an extent, yes.
I know.
I think and we can talk about it with Andor, I think that there is something to be said about I'll say the Apple philosophy of like fans, the people don't always know what they want. Sometimes you have to give them what they want without them even knowing it. And I think both Rogue One and Andor are very true to that. Like, did people want a story about how the Death Star how the Death Star has a weak point?
Man,
did people want it? People want a story about Cass, the not lead of Rogue One, the side character? You want seasons of television of that? Wild. That's not going to be any good. So we were wrong.
I'm almost done, I promise, with This Week in Geek, but I also got to give you the little sousson about Andor. If you would have told me that this would be my favorite show when I was one of the people who was angry that Rogue One existed before I saw the movie, because why do I need a 2-hour explanation for why there's a 2-inch hole on the Death Star? Like,
it's 2 meters.
2 meters. I meant 2 meters. But I for real looked at Rogue One and was like, why the fuck does this movie need to exist? Like, to explain why there's a fucking hole? No, because if this movie doesn't exist, we don't get Andor.
Oh, it is crazy. Like, it is crazy. Like, I think you're right. If you go back to, well, I'm just gonna say 2014 me, and just like, Time Traveler says the best Star Wars will be exactly what you just said, and be like,
We'll be explaining why there was a
what?
hole in the Death Star. Okay, let's finish up this week in geek.
Sure. Yeah.
Just, I know you haven't gotten around to finishing Fallout yet, but you're gonna need to, because not only is season 2 wrapping up, they've been greenlit for season 3 already, and their plan is a 5 or 6 season series. Now, I'm not caught up. I didn't watch this episode of The Last of Us Part 2 or season 2.
It's okay.
It is polarizing. It is polarizing.
I have not heard anything good about season 2 of The Last of Us.
Here's the thing, it's not bad. And it started off and I was like, I love the changes they're making. And then episode 2, I was like, I don't understand the changes they're making.
Okay, here's the thing. We don't have to linger on this either, but I've not started season 1 of The Last of Us. I want to watch season 1 and I want to watch season 2. I just find it hilarious that you have the stereotypical Redditors of The Last of Us being like, oh, it's a bad story and you can't adapt it into a good TV show because it's just bad and rotten at its core. And I'm like, you are wrong for all the dumbest reasons when I hear stuff like that.
Now people are coming out doing the opposite. Now they're saying this story is a masterpiece and the show is ruining it. And I'm like, you guys used to hate the game. The fuck are you talking about?
It's the people who I think it's the people who were like hiding on the internet in like the early 2020s that were like, I love The Last of Us Part 2, but I don't want to get bullied on the internet. And now that the show has come out, they get their time to shine in the shit, where it's just like, and man, you went for like, you can't make any of the people happy, so you decided to just make no one happy.
And this show might be more difficult to talk about than Star Wars. Because like, you know, it is impossible to navigate the minefield of Bella Ramsey looks. I don't give a goddamn. Bella Ramsey, they're doing great work. They're doing like awesome. It's not them. It's everything around them.
It's funny because yesterday I did watch a few like scene compilations just to kind of get the vibe of the show a little bit better. And my personal take, it's nothing against Bella Ramsey. That's not Ellie. I can be toxic about it for a little bit. And be like, that's not Ellie.
Here's the thing.
The thing that I've been saying is like, when the literal embodiment of Joel is standing next to Ellie and it's Bella Ramsey, and I'm like,
you know what I'll say to the people who discuss
difference,
to the people who take away from Bella's physical appearance, the one thing I will say is they look a lot more like Ashley Johnson than they do Ellie's character model. And I think that's important given that Ashley Johnson plays Ellie's mom. Like, if you look at her physically, if you look at her next to Ashley, she looks a lot like Ashley.
Yeah, I think it's just some of the stuff I noticed was like some of the mannerisms.
Oh yeah, no, that's I'm not saying that was you. Sorry.
Yeah. Like there's like, we don't have to get into it.
Here's the thing.
It's a choice.
Here's the thing. Let's get through season 2. Let's get both of us, like you and I, to both watch the whole series, and then we can talk about it because I'm also realizing that I'm coming at season 2 of that show with too much baggage from playing from thinking about the game.
Sure.
And I'm
Sure.
like, I can't divorce myself completely from, well, this isn't how it was in the game.
Sure.
And it's like, I need to stop and go, okay, but it's not how it is here. So like, just let them tell their story, see where it goes, and see if it works. Because maybe it will.
And I think that's what, going back to the original talking point, is I think that's why Fallout was so successful, is because not that the stories of Fallout aren't good, that's not the important part of Fallout. It's the world. And so when you have an open, literal sandbox like Fallout, and you can tell your own stories in that world, and you can pay so much homage to the games, and like the opening scene where they're showing, you know, the traits through the special system in a very fun tongue-in-cheek way, and then you get to have like a new vault, you know, that like you haven't seen before, and like characters you've never been introduced to before, and it's like, yeah, you have a ghoul, you have or you know, someone from the Brotherhood of Steel, you have a vault dweller.
I am curious how they're gonna keep that show going for that many seasons.
How many alarms do I set?
Enough.
Here's how I feel about that. I can't think of many shows that are good past a 4th season. Like, there are some, not a lot.
I can say like, that quality of a show changes after that long. Yeah, for sure.
Like, there are shows that, like, even though I'm not like attuned to, but like I think, you know, like something like The Simpsons, I think, you know, everyone has their own falling off point. I think the most common falling off point with The Simpsons is when Conan O'Brien left the show, which is around season 4 or 5. But like I think there's still good like up until probably season 6 or 7 of The Simpsons. And like I will say, like, an example, like a counterexample that is, like, again with Matt Groening, is Futurama season 5 is one of the best seasons of television ever. Like, it's like the like last season of Futurama was like unbelievably good. And then you do have stuff like like something like the Clone Wars, where it does get better as it goes along, but it's also like the fact that it's 7 seasons and like 20-ish episodes per season, like it means it's kind of a slog to get through in a lot of ways. Rebels ending at season 4 makes it so much better. Like Game of Thrones falls off after season 4 for most people. Like it's like season 4 is the cutoff of when it's still good. Like you can certainly enjoy season 5 and 6 and stuff like that, but like 7 and 8 are just like not people's favorite. And yeah, like I think even like stuff like Star Trek: The Next Generation, where it's just like, yes, season 1, pre Beard Riker, not good at all. And the fact that it starts with Q, it's like I've learned, like, if you want to start people with The Next Generation, you cannot show them season 1. You cannot start them with Q. It doesn't work.
I disagree. No.
But no, like I think like shows like Supernatural, like they just drag on, and it's just not good after a while. Like I think 4 to 5 should always be the limit of expecting a show to be good, and like Fallout planning 5 to 6 seasons with these characters. I think a season of television is a lot of content to begin with, and to think that far in the future of like 6 of this, like I said, like I've seen the first like 3 episodes and they're all very good. But it's like that's like the issue is it's like it's not a movie, and it's getting through that is like sometimes the hard part. It's like doing this 6 times sounds like a chore, right, no matter how good it is.
No, I agree, which is why it's great that Andor ended at 2. Uh,
I disagree. I want more. I want more.
okay, real quick, the other thing I do want to point out for anybody that cares, Stellar Blade is coming to PC. We officially got the announcement June 11th. I still say if you like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, that game is fantastic. And if you're a dirty, rotten, awful gooner, that game is even better.
I will be picking this up June 11th. There's absolutely no way I'm not. I saw that and I saw the controversy and I was like, "Yep, you're not wrong." This game looks great though.
It's well, and like it handles so well. I joke about the fact that, you know, I started and I was like, well, maybe I'll play this game. I don't know. It sounds kind of okay. And then I started playing it and I was like, every time I talk to somebody about it, I'm like, guys, listen. I know what you're going to say, but hear me out. It's amazing.
There was a game like PS3, like I think it was on the Vita as well, like King's Crown or something like that, that would like had the most insane body proportions of all time. Like it was like, you know, if you think about like visual novels and like how it's like, you know, character to the left of the screen and like the breasts extended to the right of the screen. And then like they like slowly wobbled. It didn't have jiggle physics, it had wobble physics. But like the gameplay was so good in that game that you're just like, oh, this is so bad, this is so cringe. I love this so much. What was that game? Dragon's Crown.
Oh, wow. Deep cut. And really quickly, if you just want to dunk on it, like I just always love to dunk on, Anakin Did Nothing Wrong is a video that a very popular Star Wars creator put out.
I made a TikTok and I didn't call out any content creators. I figured like this is a topic for conversation.
Fuck Star
like,
Wars theory. I said it. I don't care.
He's kind of annoying. He's very annoying. You know, okay, I was scrolling, so I finished, so I picked up Haley from the airport last night at 9 p.m. We got home at like 10:30. And we watched Andor like starting at 10:30. So we were up late last night and I was like so cooked after that. I was just like in bed and I'm like, I'm just gonna scroll Reddit on my phone, and I somehow, like getting all the Andor stuff, I got to a Star Wars theory subreddit. And I was like, I'm just so curious. I'm so morbidly curious. Like that's one of my favorite things about Reddit is just to see the just slop that exists there.
The dregs of humanity.
Oh, it's just awful. And I was like, I have to see it, and it's like 90% of it is just like people being like, I'm done with this guy. Like he's refusing to cover Andor. His takes are wild now. Like, and it's like it's kind of silly that this was the breaking point for a lot of people, and not like the past 7 years. And it's just like. It's just, it was like it was post after post and comment after comment that was just like, dude fell off, and like it's just like, oh, this was my breaking point. It's just like it's like I agree with Star Wars theory, blah blah blah. Like Disney, you know, Disney has really screwed up the franchise, blah blah blah. This is what he was asking for, and he's refusing to cover it. And I'm like, yeah, that is kind of insane. It's kind of like exposing yourself. But yeah, the whole like he went
because he can't find anything to grift about.
No.
Like because the show's too damn good. He got dragged because the end of season 1 he bitched about bricks and screws.
Yeah.
Like, and so now he went into this one and he saw part 1 and he came out with this wild ass attempt at a take, and then nobody bit, and all of a sudden he was like, well, fuck this, I ain't got nothing to grift about it.
The other grifters called him out on it, like his like friends in the little grifter verse. They were like dude, that's not like this is like there's media out there that addresses this, and it's okay. Like and like I remember he like people were challenging him, like people who had platforms were challenging him, not like his comment section. And like it is wild that like you do have people that were like covering Andor positively. Like I think Critical Drinker was one that was like, yeah, I really like Andor, and it was like there comes a time when like you have to set the grift aside, because if you don't, like people will just realize it's a grift.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it's just like, dude, if you can't say anything positive about it, it's like I will say, if you're only here in Star Wars for the lightsaber fights, I get it. That this isn't going to be your speed, and that like if and I think like the self-aware fan that is like, I'm just here for Anakin and Obi-Wan to swing lightsabers, like that's what I like. We have very different interpretations of Star Wars, but I respect that like you are aware of what you like about Star Wars. And I think that's fine. Like if you can be like, hey, Andor is not for me because I don't care about this part of Star Wars, I have nothing to say to that person like negatively. But like the whole like that the whole like I'm not covering Andor into what you were talking about, Anakin did nothing wrong, is like, I made a video about it of like my thoughts, because I think there is nuance to that conversation, and it was nuance he wasn't giving the conversation.
Listen, I'm gonna give you an example, and this comes from one of my friends, but like comes from my friends growing up. I had friends who were very like, to use an example here, okay? When discussing abortion, my male friends used to say, one of my male friends very commonly would say, well, why doesn't a man get a choice? What if he wants to raise the baby? And I was like, well, but you can't put other people through stuff because of you. And what if you change your mind? And what if you do all this stuff? And like, I had all these reasons, and I swear to God, this was going somewhere. And like, what it gets me to is this idea that what if it's me and I can't, and I need this, or I want this? And like, for taking everything from even these problematic areas and saying, well, but if it was me, because I identify with this character. And like, so where I'm sorry, I'm a little scattered, but with this, where I'm taking it is, it's this idea that in the same light that Anakin can't disown Palpatine and say he did anything wrong, because then he would have to self-reflect.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same self-reflection that the grifters can't have. If
Right.
Anakin did something wrong, then they did something wrong.
Yes.
In advocating for him.
And this is,
and I don't know where the other thing was going. I apologize.
No. This is my problem. This is my number one problem with the Clone Wars, is it made Anakin a relatable hero, not a cautionary tale. And I think a lot of people personally that only view Anakin through the lens of the first half of Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars, like fundamentally misunderstand the character. When you look at the things, and I to some extent I blame George Lucas. Like in my video, I was like, there are things that happen to Anakin Skywalker that deserve context and get no context. Like the fact that a 9-year-old boy blew up a battleship that had like mostly droids on it, but we see that there are sentient beings. We see those beings like die in explosions, and we don't get the aftermath of a 9-year-old boy having to understand what they just did. Like they just killed like potentially hundreds of people all at once, over a trade dispute, right? No, no,
No, I'm
that's the
like,
Phantom Menace.
yeah, you're not wrong. Who's the villain? Anakin. No,
And it's one of those things like sure, decisions by George Lucas could have been made in different ways, where Anakin could have started as an older, if Hayden Christensen were to have been Anakin from Jump Street, like we have more.
if Anakin is 16 in the Phantom Menace, then everything makes more sense. Like
Yes.
when he gets to the temple and Yoda's like, "Fuck you, bring this grown ass man here for? We can't
he's too old.
We can't train
He's too
this
old."
dude." But every attempt, I will say this. This is my problem with George Lucas. He wrote a story about a young boy falling down the alt-right pipeline. And he did it in such a way but he wanted the boy to be sympathetic. But he tried so hard to make him sympathetic in the face of the atrocities that he was going to have him commit, that he made him too sympathetic. It's to go bring it back up again from like last week, it's the Starship Troopers effect. It's the, like, when you're so satirical, you go so far that people forget that or don't realize you're a satire. Like, that's my problem, is that, like, Anakin is a villain, and the water is too muddy for people to realize that.
Yes. Like there's so many facets to Anakin's characterization in the prequels as well as the Clone Wars that I think are very good. I will never take away from people that like Anakin is a well-written character and that he's a interesting character and that his story was worth telling. Like I believe all of that wholeheartedly. I think like I said, the contextualization of his actions are not handled well. I think from the Lucrehulk battleship to the Tuskens, to Mace Windu. Like I think we don't get the context of a lot of these actions. I think there's so many things that could have been changed. You know, we could be here all day for the next many days talking about things that would have made more sense in the prequels, like Dooku not being killed off so early. You know, Grievous simply not existing. But like when it comes to Anakin, like in like the context of like, did he do anything wrong? It's just like, yes, there's nuance to say that like this was a troubled boy from a very young age, and that there's lots of trauma, and that he was being manipulated by an evil and powerful man. Yes, we can have that conversation, but I always say that the line in the sand is Mace Windu, is that Palpatine was in a position of weakness where the power had been removed from him, and Palpatine gave Anakin the choice. Choose me or choose Mace and the Jedi Order. Anakin chose Palpatine. He was not forced to do it. He was not pressured into doing it. He made the choice. And that's where you cannot say Anakin did nothing wrong. He did. He made the choice. He betrayed the Jedi. We can talk about the problems with the Jedi Order. Sure, 100%. They tried with Anakin, and Anakin did not let them in. And that's how we got down the path. And it's just like, yes, there's coercion, but we also see in Attack of the Clones that like his political ideologies are not caused by Palpatine's coercion. Like his actions on Tatooine are not Palpatine's coercions.
I figured out where I was going earlier and what the comparison was, and I want to bring it in because I want to tie that off with a bow, because otherwise I won't. Everyone goes to the Anakin was motivated by love. He did everything for Padme, and that's like where the thesis of that video is that he did everything for love, and you know it's not, that's a worthwhile motivation basically. And like to that is where I was comparing the abortion thing, was the idea that like, well, but I'm doing this for the baby, I'm doing this for someone else, and it's like, no, you want to have control, you want to make this decision. Like the barest thing with Anakin is like, if you're told your wife is gonna die and there's nothing you can do about it, you have myriad number of options before fall to the dark side, slaughter a bunch of kids, and like, even if one of those options is leave the Jedi Order and spend what little time you have left with your wife, like, that was an option, and he never even thought about it. And that was my point, and it goes along with what you're saying about, like, he had a choice. And I can tell you about cognitive dissonance and everything that leads him to make that choice in that moment. But he still pushes Mace out the window, essentially. He still makes those conscious choices. Like I said, the scariest scene in Revenge of the Sith for me is not any sort of violent moment. It's the moment after he just killed Mace Windu, and before he goes to Mustafar, and he goes to Padme. And he's just so calm. And he's like, everything's going to be okay now. And it's like, I just got to go take care of this one thing. And I'm like, that is the most haunting scene in that movie. Because what the fuck?
There's been a lot of conversations, and maybe this segues really well into Andor. There's been a lot of conversations since the re-release in theaters of Revenge of the Sith of people kind of like going back to the theater to watch Revenge of the Sith again, and they're like, oh, maybe I haven't watched this movie in a while, and maybe there's some really questionable things here. And one of the things that, like, I remember bringing up to someone is not that it's like even best for the story or anything like that, but like, your wife is a prominent and powerful politician. You just had the Supreme Chancellor tell you that he knows things about the dark side of the Force. The thing that you have been trained for 10 plus years now at this point, right? By the Jedi Order, that is like, you don't want to go down this path. Not even going to the Jedi. Talk to Padme. Hey, I just heard something that I feel is very strange from Chancellor Palpatine. I need to know how you feel about this. Does this happen with politicians? Is this a normal thing? The fact that, like, in Revenge of the Sith, Padme has like 30 seconds of screen time is like criminal. And like the fact that
and she brushes her curly hair.
Oh my God. Start. And then she has a funeral.
Anyways,
the fact that no conversation after the Darth Plagueis scene is had with any other character is silly. It's just like, that is the atomic bomb. Like, the fact that it's just like, you have to have the conversation in Palpatine's office, or his like quarters, whatever that is. And it's like, oh yeah, I learned now. And it's like, no, you learned at the opera he was a Sith Lord, and you are either too dense or you took too many hits to the head during the Clone Wars where you didn't put two and two together. But like, you watch that scene and you're just like, so the guy running the galaxy seems to know about the dark side of the Force, and that raises 0 red flags for you? Okay. All right. Got it, pal.
Oh. And speaking of red flag, I don't know. All right, let's talk about Andor. Let's talk about Andor.
I'd love to talk about Andor.
I do want to know, what was your takeaway from season 1? Like, going
season
into
1
this year.
Season 1 was really special to me because it very much felt like the original trilogy. It felt like there were adventures, there were heists, there were like there were stakes, even though we know like Cassian's gonna make it out, it's a prequel and we know it's like there were so many new characters that it was just like Nemec was like one of the saddest things in all of Andor season 1, is like him breaking his back and not making it through the Aldhani arc.
Oh, by the way, I know it was important to Xerxes. We're probably gonna spoil the fuck out of the season 2 like
Yeah,
any minute
100%.
now. So if you're not
100%.
finished with it and you don't want to be spoiled, run. Just
Yeah.
before we continue.
Yeah, I think I had a different response to you with Rogue One. Is when I saw the trailer for Rogue One, I was really excited, because like A New Hope has always been my favorite, and so like when this is like a true prequel to New Hope, not a prequel to the Star Wars saga, if that makes sense, I was very excited about Rogue One. And I liked Cassian. I liked Jin more than I liked Cassian in Rogue One. So when I heard they were making an Andor show, I was like, why not a Jin show? That makes way more sense. Like, she's the more compelling character, like the relationship with her dad, the relationship with Saw Gerrera. And if you haven't read Rebel Rising, like, that's it. And it's one of the best Star Wars books ever written. But I had that feeling going into it as like this should have been a Jyn Erso show, but Cassian Andor knocked it out of the park. Like even season one, like I think from the I'll just call it like the first Ferrix arc to Aldhani to Narkina to the second Ferrix arc, like solid the
Dude.
entire way through. Like just incredible.
The Narkina 5 arc like changed me fundamentally as a person. Like I can't think of the phrase "I can't swim."
The end of oh my god!
Oh my god!
My theory for Dedra. Spoilers. We're gonna jump around. My theory for Dedra was so different, and I know a lot of people were thinking Dedra's going to end up on the Death Star, and I was like, I think Dedra's going to kill herself. I thought Luthen and Dedra were going to be switched. Anyways, we'll get to that.
I'll get there, and I just I'll just say, this goes along with what I'm going to say about everything. Tony Gilroy has done something amazing in making us give a shit about a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah.
Like literally nobody in Mon Mothma might be the only person in this series up to Rogue One who really like fucking matters to the end of the
barely like in Return of the Jedi.
She's right. Just like she's only in that scene in Return of the Jedi. So like really nobody. They're all nobodies, and like
she's an exposition dump in Return of the Jedi. That's all she is.
She told us about Manny Bothans, but
yeah,
but like for real, he took a bunch of characters nobody gives a fuck about, and then somehow reminds you at the end of Andor and at the end of Rogue One that these are a bunch of nobodies and that their deaths mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. There's a very but not in a, there's a hopeful nihilism that I love about what Tony Gilroy has done, in the sense that it matters so much on the grand scale, but at the same time, history will not remember the name Cassian Andor. No one in the sequels is likely sitting around telling stories about the hero Cassian Andor. But I think that that's beautiful, not because I'm not taking anything away from Andor, and I'm not saying that this isn't a point to necessarily be argued against. The point is, for every Luke Skywalker in a war, in a rebellion, in anything like that, there are thousands of Cassians.
Sure.
And their stories don't get told, and they don't get immortalized.
Yeah.
And so my thing is that we have heroes of the Republic who everyone's going to remember for generations and generations. And now we also have the story of a bunch of people who history will not tell you about, like Cyril Karn.
Yeah,
we'll get
Cyril in season 2 is very. I really enjoyed this story of Cyril Karn. But no, it's this. You're right. It's because it's. This takes the idea of, and this is something that say what you will about the Clone Wars and stuff like that. Andor to me is what so many other Star Wars projects have tried to do, and I'm not going to say they failed, but like Andor succeeded so much better at this idea of like take a character who is relatively insignificant to the grand scheme and flesh them out. And it's one of those things like, yes, Ahsoka is a huge part of the Clone Wars, but like to your average Star Wars fan who's just seen the movies, she is a nobody. The Book of Boba Fett. Boba Fett's a guy who's on screen in the original trilogy for 3 minutes, and he's a little kid in like Attack of the Clones. Like that's it. So like you have that, and then you have characters like the Mandalorian, which like again is just like a new character. But yeah, like you have these characters that are fleshed out. Like Wedge Antilles gets a little bit of a backstory in Rebels, and like you have a lot of these things happening, but at the same time, the impact of these characters is not felt the way Andor makes them feel felt. Like, and this is my thing that like talking about Andor, like especially season 2, over the past 4 weeks is what I think Star Wars has always struggled with is a lot of its characters, like main characters and side characters, sometimes are one-dimensional. Like Han Solo is a relatively one-dimensional character. Like there's nuance to his character for sure, but like compared to Luke Skywalker,
I argue that George took any attempt at nuance out of Han Solo when he added the Greedo shot. That was Han shot first was the character development of Han Solo. Like, because it's the only reason that you're surprised at the end when he comes back is because not the scoundrel who would just shoot a dude dead in the bar. What?
Yeah. No, 100%. You're right. Like,
so like you're right. Like, I think you're right. I think there was a few more dimensions to Han Solo in A New Hope, and then George, by the time we got to the special editions, really took that out of even in A New Hope, and then he just doesn't matter beyond that, really.
Yeah.
I hate to say that.
If we look at something like Tales of the Underworld, which I think is fine, it's not my favorite Tales series. I don't know if you've seen it, but like
I did.
I think it does highlight characters like Cad Bane are very one-dimensional. I think Asajj Ventress, I say, is like a 1.5 dimensional character. Like she is a femme fatale. Like there's no getting around that. She's a femme fatale in the Clone Wars, and obviously in Dark Disciple you get a lot more elaboration. That's a book. Like I love the books. We can't go too crazy on the books.
I would argue that it's still really not that much.
Yeah, and so I think that like while I enjoyed Tales of the Underworld, I think it did highlight that like this is a problem with a lot of Star Wars characters, is they're very one-dimensional, and like you have really got to try and pull depth and breadth to these characters, where Andor, on the other hand, Cyril Karn is a complex character, and he is not the most important part of the story. You know, like the complexity of someone like Mon Mothma and everything that she goes through from season 1 up until the end of season 2, like, is wild. And it's like her cousin Vel is a multi-dimensional character, and again, she is of the Rebels, she's one of the like least screen time side character stories, and she still has a lot of depth to her character. And that's what I think this show does really well, is that every single character that is going to be involved with this story, like you certainly have these like one-dimensional side characters, like some of the Gormans are very one-dimensional. And that's fine. You can't write a complicated backstory and character arcs for every single person that's on screen. That's ridiculous. But all of the main characters, I think I have talked to so many people about Andor, and so many people have a different favorite character in Andor, which is crazy. Out of like the main cast, like there's so many people. And like as much as I love Krennic as a villain, we got a lot of depth to Krennic
Ah,
in season 2.
I love Orson Krennic.
The
Oh my
the
god.
finale, like, oh my god, just oh my god,
Yes.
oh my god.
Oh.
But no, like this is just this to me. There's something that we can definitely talk about maybe after we go through everything, but like this is special. Like Andor is very special. Um, season 1 to season 2, like there's so much of season 1 I love, and there's so much of season 2 I love that like it feels unfair to even like rank them or compare them to another because both are so good in so many different ways.
No, I absolutely agree because it just, oh my god. Let's just dive into just thoughts on maybe each arc, I guess.
Yeah.
If you want. So like starting at 1 year later in that first arc, what were some of your takeaways from that first arc?
Yeah, the first like I guess the wedding arc, uh there's so much. Like the one thing about this season in particular, that I do think was an improvement over season 1, not that season 1 didn't have it, was the visual storytelling, the how the shots are composed, the colors, all of that stuff. Um, there's so many parallels to the real world in this show, especially that we see in the first 3 arcs specifically. But in arc 1, the wedding stuck out the most to me. And Mon Mothma's sacrifice and Mon Mothma's love for Leda, despite having to give her up to save the rebellion, is heartbreaking. There's lots of visual storytelling, like the floating dress that has a veil that looks like a cage. There's just the warm tones of all of the rebellion when it's shot versus the cool tones of the Empire. I could go really in depth on a lot of this stuff, and I don't know if we have time to get super in depth, but like because there's so much to talk about. But I think that like arc 1, to me, the most important part, not the most important part, the most impactful part for me was Take Holma and how the show is structured and how well it is structured, because the last thing we see in the 1 year later arc is Take Holma and Cinta.
Yeah.
That's the last thing we see. And the next thing we see is 1 year later. We don't get the conversation between Mon and Perrin of like, you really let yourself go with the wedding. You know, we don't get the conversation. We don't get the, like, those rebels died on Yavin. Like, they're dead.
Yeah.
They are dead. They did not make it. They starved to death. I like this the structure of, we're not, you get to make up your own conclusions about what happens to some of these plot threads. We're going to leave them, and like everything was concluded, but there's no epilogue to these arcs. Like there's no morning after, there's just the next year. And that structure works so well for this show, and I love it.
No, I absolutely agree. And like my biggest thing with one, I did love the kind of the juxtaposition between Cassian and Mon Mothma in these episodes, where we see both of them hiding their identities, both of them trying to fit in amongst rebels and possibly enemies. We both see them in hiding in entirely different situations. whether
Mm.
that's, hiding in the jungles among the rebels, not even being able to tell them which sect he's a part of because he's afraid, and the same is sort of going on with Mon, and hiding amongst all of these other Chandrillan entities, hiding amongst these rich people, not knowing whether or not Tay Kolma is talking and who's working for whom. Like, I just think that there's like, it's a wonderful way for us to see how similar their struggles are, although they are wildly different at the same time.
Yep. There's like what we were talking about earlier is like there's so much complexity to each and every one of these characters that, like, man, it's just wild to think about. And like, I'll save some of this stuff for more like final thought things, but like, I think that you have a character like Mon Mothma, who again we're introduced to in Return of the Jedi, and then she's recast in a deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith, and then brought back for Rogue One, and Genevieve O'Reilly has carried the torch of Mon Mothma with such elegance and grace for the character, for a character that is an exposition dump in Return of the Jedi. And like, I'm not a big interview behind the scenes like PR person, but I have been watching some of the stuff for Andor season 2, and especially some of the stuff at Star Wars Celebration. And this is a very behind the scenes thing, but the thing that I think is so wonderful about this show is how each actor was impacted by their character. Like, Adria was so impacted by Bix. Diego has been so impacted by Cassie, and Genevieve has been so impacted by Mon. And all of the cast like genuinely loves their character and like relates to their character, and puts so much effort into that. And I think that's because like Tony Gilroy and the people who helped write this show put so much care into these characters, and they made them feel real. And kind of like what we're talking about Revenge of the Sith is like, you may not agree with the decisions that some of these characters are making, specifically like Dedra Miro and Cyril and Partagaz and Krennic. Like, of course you may not agree with them because they're the villains, but like, they're not like irrationally making decisions. Like Lonnie, you feel for in this show, in season 1 and season 2. Like, he has a family, he wants to get to his family. We never see his family, and like I think that's intentional.
And neither does he.
Neither does he. He ain't gonna see them. But like, it's like you understand, like with a character like Lonnie, that like he wants to help, but it's just like it's a lot for him. And he's just nervous about it because he knows what the punishment is, and it's like you understand his interaction with Clea in the second arc. I think it's the second arc, where it's just like he's freaking out, and Clea is just, as always, calm and composed, and
ice cold.
And this is the thing that is so insane about the writing of this, is a character like Clea, who was Luthen's assistant in season 1 and was an interesting enough character, but was like Luthen's assistant, and like she knew how to work the radio, she was the comms person, and like, yeah, like Clea is cool. Oh my god. This is like we're talking about the show that is based off of the side character from Rogue One, which is the movie that's based off of a plot hole from the last movie. You made me such an emotional wreck over the assistant to Luthen in his shop kissing his forehead. Like, this is the thing, and we can definitely move on to like the second arc. We should probably talk about Mina Rao, but like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say before we got to the second arc. But say what you're gonna say.
This is like the online discourse, and like being on TikTok and social media, and it's just like, when people complain about they want good writing Like they like, oh, the writing was bad. The writing in the sequels was bad. The writing in this was bad. And I'm like, I can certainly disagree on some points and agree on others. Like what I just described is you took a character that again is a side character to a side character, and you made that character's arc impactful and emotional. That is exceptional writing.
Yeah.
And the fact that like there are people that are trying to take down Andor, and again, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. That's different than the people who are saying it's boring, it's poorly written, you know, Star Wars is woke, Disney, blah 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 blah. Like it's so telling at this point, and it's just like for me, it just further cements the whole thing. It was never about the writing. It was when it came to the sequels or it came to the Book of Boba Fett or the Mandalorian or Kenobi, it doesn't matter. It was never about the writing. Never.
No. And
never, ever, ever.
And again, it's because writing is such a subjective thing that it's something you can easily point to 90% of the time to call it bad, because you can force a square peg into a round hole, but and that one works. But when a show is air fucking tight like this is, you find that there's nowhere for them to to pick on.
You have to, if you want to criticize the show, like, and I believe there are good criticisms of this show. Like there are plot devices that don't make a lot of sense. There's certainly things like, you know, no show is truly perfect. Like sure, and there's like there are things even about the finale that I was just like, ooh, I would have rather have seen, you know, like, you know, I think they with the Gorman stuff, like I think they really let all of the explosiveness out before the finale, and so the finale felt like the best way to compare it was like the ending to Return of the King, of like, I'm very invested in these characters, so I want to see how every character gets wrapped up, but it did feel a little bit like we're spending 3 episodes to wrap this all up, and I'm glad we got the time with these characters. I'm glad that like I'm glad like the little moments like the rivalry between Vel and Clea, and then you end that with Vel seeing Clea in the rain, and she's clearly distressed, and it's like you want to cry. And you're like, she puts the coat on Clea, and it's like, oh my. So like it's cool to see stuff like that. But like yeah, like these are like nitpicks at this point. But Mina Rao is.
I was just gonna say one thing. Speaking of like legitimate complaints or reasons people might have to not love the show, I will say Mina Rao was one of the hardest things for me to watch in Star Wars.
I don't think you're alone in that at all.
Like, but I feel like it's necessary because it's not because, the Empire does bad stuff. Yeah, we know. It's to remind us, the audience, that this is so scary because of how familiar it looks.
Right.
And you should be. Like, if it makes you feel afraid or uncomfortable when you watch that, ask yourself why. And what are we not doing to ensure that that's not going on in the real world?
Yeah.
Instead of having fictional arguments about whether or not the Empire would allow that sort of thing.
Yeah, like I think that there's, you know, I've seen people talk about the scene with Bix, and you know, some people feel like it was tastefully done, some people feel like it was not tastefully done, and I think that there's valid arguments on both sides. I fall more on the side of I love and appreciate everything they did with Bix. I think that Bix is such an amazing addition to Star Wars, and like I want a, let's go down this rabbit hole, give me a Bix show, like especially with the ending. Um, I I personally feel like yes, it's difficult to watch. Yes, it's hard. I saw it coming from a mile away. Like when he first walks up to her in the grain
Oh,
silo thing.
and when I say Mina Rao is hard to watch, I mean the whole
Yeah,
arc,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the
The
deportations,
visas. Yeah,
the ice raids essentially happening on Mina Rao, and yeah, you can clock him from the second he walks up to her the first time, and
yeah.
like,
It's and I think
and I would
this is
argue
a
that it's not. I would argue that you shouldn't be able to portray SA in a perfectly classy light. Like, I don't think it's going to be classy, if you know what I
sure,
mean.
yeah, but like I think that there is a like I think like tastefulness and like respectfulness is kind of how you can navigate that.
Yeah, maybe I just haven't seen the discourse around it, so I haven't been.
It's like I think that there are some people
I'm
that are
sure it
just like
exists. Well,
it made people
and
like I'm gonna say genuinely and understandably uncomfortable. Not the Darth Vader wouldn't condone
yeah,
this,
and
and it's like
I just
that's
realized the
bullshit.
point that I was going to make when I said that, when I brought that up with what you just said. This show, and I think it was X-Core brought it up in the chat earlier. This show is way more adult than the rest of Star
Yes.
Wars. Like, throughout Star Wars, like, when we talked about like one-dimensional characters, especially if you look at the original trilogy, these are archetypal characters for a children's narrative.
Yeah.
Like, and so the good guy wears black and or wears white, and the bad guy wears black, and like the good guy gets the girl and beats the bad guy, and yay, everybody goes home happy.
It's a
Andor
familiar story and it's well
Andor is
executed.
very adult, like thematically, very dark, very mature. And
Yes.
I can see people going, that's not what I want out of Star Wars. And if you don't want to engage with that part, you don't have to. And I do think that there are probably people who maybe watched the show up until then, saw that part and was like, I don't want to. That's not how I want to think about
Sure.
Star Wars.
I think I think that there are people, and I think a little bit of level of self-awareness comes into play in this of like what we talked about a little earlier is I know people that like I have colleagues that I work with that like enjoy Star Wars. Like they try their best to watch all the new projects and like they like everything to varying extents. Like I have a colleague that really loved the Acolyte. Didn't really like Kenobi. Doesn't like the sequels. Doesn't like the prequels. But and it's one of those things. Like it is interesting to talk to so many people, especially who aren't like chronically online. A lot of times. But it's like so many people resonate with so many different things where they're not engaged in the grifter conversations about like black lesbian space witches on the internet. They just like, oh no, Acolyte was really cool. Like I love these stories about the light side and the dark side of the Force. And I'm like, oh yeah, like if that's what you're here for Star Wars, like Acolyte's probably gonna really do it for you.
I'm here for black lesbian space witches.
Hell yeah, brother. But no, like I have like friends that like were texting me. I'm like, oh, you're watching Skeleton Crew, right? And I was like, yeah, Skeleton Crew's really good. Like, this is my favorite thing I've seen since like Return of the Jedi. And I'm like, wow, that's like really cool to hear. And then and I've had people that they watched the first season of Andor and they were like, yeah, I don't vibe with it. They're just like it's very dialogue heavy. It seems like a heavy show, and they're just like, I don't come to Star Wars for that. It's like there's other stuff I like to watch that involves that. Like, and they're like, like I like Breaking Bad, and I like like Better Call Saul, which has been off, and like they go to stuff like Game of Thrones for like the really heavy stuff. I'm like, yeah, Star Wars for me has always been whoosh whoosh lightsabers, zoom zoom X-wings, and I'm like, That's 100% fair. You're not wrong. But again, I think it's the level of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where it becomes frustrating is when people try to justify how they feel about, like, Star Wars should be as though it's the correct way, instead of being like, yeah, it's just this. Like, for me, like, I cannot in good faith come on here or talk to anyone and say superheroes are objectively the stupidest thing in the world. Like, that's not fair, because there's so many beautiful and incredible stories that involve superheroes. Like, one of my favorite trilogies in film is the Blade trilogy. I love the Blade trilogy. But like, when I go see a movie, or I want to engage in media, like, a dude shooting spiderwebs out of his wrist is not exactly going to just enthrall me every single time. You know, a guy who can fly just because he has the power, and, you know, he shoots laser beams out of his eyes and super strength. Like, sure, you can tell amazing stories out of that. I'm not taking that away. It just doesn't appeal to me. And then, but I can be self-aware and be like, it's not for me. And like, I'm sure that people can tell me a thousand different ways to Sunday of how important the story of Iron Man is, and that's great. I love that for them. I don't fucking care. And it's the same way of like, you may just care about the Force. Like, you may just care about the light side and the dark side, and how that dichotomy works in a mystical sense, and a real world parallel to politics and grounded human stories isn't what you like about Star Wars. That's totally fair. But it's just I don't want, and I feel like it is a small group of people, which is, I feel very fortunate about, that are trying to justify how bad Andor is, season 1 and 2, and it's just like, come on, guy, come on. There's a 1-star review on IMDb about the Gorman arc that is like getting dragged. So,
You know,
that feels good.
You know who would have loved Black Lesbian Space Witches? Blade. Blade would have loved it. Now,
absolutely.
Speaking of people who were in superhero movies, part 2 brings Saw back into the story of Andor, with Willman going to Takar to see Saw in part 2. And now we're in arc 2.
Yes. Gorman.
It
turns out spiders aren't the only interesting thing about Gorman.
So I will tell you, part 2 is probably the weakest part for me of the 4. It feels like we're moving people. It feels like part 2 is moving people into position for part 3. Part 3 is what this season is about, and then part 4 is moving them to where they are in Rogue One, which is okay. And there's a lot of cool stuff in between. But
Arc 2 and Arc 4 are largely setups. Yeah, I think that's fair. I enjoyed Arc 2 a lot. I think that for me, like, the first arc of Gorman, there's something that I've said about Andor, especially in season 2, that it handles well, is it adds, like, it's not that it's easy, but like, films can add tension, you know, with so many different elements of, like, you can make a scene tense and stuff like that. And the thing that Andor, I think, does so well is it adds tension and weight at the same time. And I think that the second arc of Gorman, or the first arc of Gorman, the second arc of the show or the season, sets up the weight of the third arc, and the tension of the third arc before the massacre happens it's the one thing I think this show excels at more than anything, from Aldhani to the Narkina prison break to Rick's Road to the wedding, like the wedding with Luthen and Mon kind of like pacing each other, and Luthen keeping an eye on Take Holma, stuff like that. And the Gorman heist has a ton of tension in it, with Vel and Cinta.
Oh yeah, this whole series has been a masterclass this season in creating tension on screen.
Yeah,
Like just in every scene,
it's
walking
it.
down a hallway feels heavy in
Oh
this
yeah, like
show.
like there's something to be said about like the finale, the 11th episode, that just like the end of the 11th episode is just like this is a SWAT raid. This is very scary. But no, like yeah, like that's something that this show does, I think, better than all. Like, if I'm being honest, like any show I've seen is how it sets up the tension. Like, and I remember when in season 1 in the Aldani arc, I was like, I think this is the most tense I've ever been in watching anything. Just something's gonna go wrong. When does it go wrong? How does it go wrong? And they hold that tension so well. And when it inevitably does break, it's like this relief, but also it's always exciting and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think the one thing to talk about with this arc though is our favorite awkward couple. Uh, the lights have to be turned out. Cyril Karn and Dedra Miro.
Oh my god. I again I can't help but look at their relationship through the lens of the entire season now. And like the fact that again, we are sold. This is the beauty of television, and this is like subversion at its highest level, because they are the most mundane, random people in the entire galaxy. They're just two people who happen to work for the Empire, but they could literally just be anybody. But because there is a camera on them, and because we are being tuned into their lives, we project onto them this importance, this grandiosity, so that all these things that they're doing throughout this arc, like we're watching and we're like looking for the big picture, and we're trying to see like, like for example, Cyril is undercover. He's trying to get the Gorman front to let him in and mingle with the rebels, and no one above Dedra, we learn, gives a flying fuck about Cyril being there. Like this whole thing looks really important to us, the audience, but the Empire doesn't give a fuck that Cyril's there. Like he's just a dude, and like again, it's within the context of the whole series that you really look at that. It's amazing the way they make it feel so important what Cyril and Dedra are doing on Gorman, specifically what Cyril is doing. And it is important because I mean, like, he's part of the reason that they're successful in the Gorman heist. Like, it's because of his interference in ways like
Cyril to me is so fascinating as a character, because we'll get to it in the next arc, but like he is a character that is, I think, a reflection of how well propaganda works on people. Like he is a product of the Imperial propaganda machine, like through and through. He is what happens when propaganda works perfectly. Like and I really enjoy his character. I really enjoy like Edie is to me a very interesting character as well. And like his relationship with his mother, and then his relationship with Dedra. And I enjoy things. I enjoy his character because there is almost a butterfly effect with Cyril Karn, because like you're right, in the grand scheme of things, Cyril doesn't matter. But if Cyril would have just listened to his boss at Premor Security and brushed it under the rug, none of this would have happened. None of this. They would like Cassian would have never been, brought up into the rebellion, they would have never gotten the Death Star plans. Luke would have never blown up the Death Star. Like, Cyril meddling in his little way into this stuff going on Ferrix changes the course of the galaxy. And I love that little butterfly effect that he has on the galaxy at large. Like, yes, he's literally the butterfly effect. Like, if you smush a butterfly, the whole world changes. He's that butterfly. He's an insignificant player in the grand scheme of things, but if you remove him, it all changes. And that's what I think is just so interesting about this character. And again, it's just how well this show is written and structured, is that this, let's be real, this fucking mall cop is like
fucking Paul Blart.
He matters in his own way, and I do genuinely enjoy the relationship he does have with Dedra, because I have seen some, I'm just going to say, lukewarm takes on it, about how like they are just using each other to their own ends, and that's a valid thing. But like, the thing about Andor season 2 for me is that one of the core themes of Andor season 2 is unconventional love. And we see that with Mon and Perrin. We see that with Vel and Cinta. We see that with Cassian and Bix. We see that with with a lot of other characters, with Clea and Luthen, and then we do see it with Cyril and Dedra.
Listen, I'm gonna jump to the very end real quick, but that's because I have a very serious question I have to ask. Whose goddamn baby was that?
That's Cassian's baby. That's Cassian's baby. That's
like, I'm like, that bitch was gone. That was 1 year later. That is a little bit.
That's Cassian's baby. That's Cassian's baby. You will not convince me otherwise. That's Cassian's child. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, his mom did drugs during the pregnancy. I'm just saying.
It was sleeping medication. It was medicine. She wasn't up in the rhino like my boy Wilman was.
Whatever, yeah. Oh, I was expecting, so as we get, this kind of goes into these next two, I was expecting Will to go full on partisan, like full on crazy partisan, just by the way, like, especially like he meets them in part 2, and then in part 3, like, there's these questions like, where you been? And he's like, just been. And it's like, oh, you were with Saw. Like, you were 100% with Saw was where my brain was. And I'm like, I was surprised not to see that kind of play out into part 4.
Here's the thing with Will that I really love, and the thing with Saw is, I think you're right. I think like it would have been maybe a little bit, I think it would have been interesting to see a more extreme version of Wilman's character that fully grows with the partisans. But I do also appreciate that he doesn't turn his back on Cassian and the people of Ferrix. I think that's also very important for his character. And as much as I love Luthen's speech in season 1, my 2 most favorite speeches in all of Andor are now Saw's speech to Wilman and Vel's speech after the heist in Gorman. Those are my 2 favorite, like, by far.
Rebellion is not for the sane.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about that scene with the Rhydonium is Saw giving Will agency, and I think it's one of those things. I love the whole sequence on this is Dakar that they're on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Which, hey, reference to the sequel trilogy. I love it. I think that what they did really well with Saul in season 2 is they showed that he is not this crazy kook who's just causing trouble for the rebellion. He is a very smart individual. He is always 10 steps ahead of everyone. Like, he knew that dude was an Imperial spy from the beginning. And he was going to have Will do the Rhydonium, like, from the start. And what I love about that, and kind of going back to what we were talking about with Anakin, is with, in the scene with Mace Windu and Palpatine, is that Saw lets Will have his own agency. He doesn't pull the mask off of Will. He lets Will pull the mask off. And I think that's very important, because I think that you have the scene in season 1 where Will is looking up at his father, who's just been killed. And that's like the first step of, like, the Empire is wrong and I want to get back at the Empire because of this. But what can I do? And then we see him, he builds the bomb that is thrown on Brick's Road.
Will wasn't a rebel until that moment. Like, Will's been with them. Will's been with them, and Will's been floating by, and he's been surviving.
He's been surviving, and he's fighting. He has wanted to fight the Empire, but I do think that Saw is the person who made him fully believe in the cause. Mm-hmm. And it is because of the Rhydonium and understanding a character like Saw. And I think it's so important. And it's like, Will doesn't stay behind on Gorman if it's not for Saw. Because Will sees that the help is needed on Gorman, and he's gonna stay there. And that's because of his interactions with Saw. And it's such an impactful moment, like with Will and Saw and the Rhydonium, and his speech, and Will, like, on his knees, like, being fully absorbed not only by the Rhydonium but into the rebellion. And it's just one of those things. It's just this show continues to just be amazing in so many ways.
And I am a Saw Gerrera defender from day one. I love 100%. Saw Gerrera, and I 1000% believe the rebellion does not win without Saw Gerrera.
No, not at all.
Like, there's no way they win. They have to have both. Like, they have to have Mon. They have to have him.
You didn't read Mask of Fear, did you?
I did, yeah.
You did, yeah. Like, I always viewed the way that book structures the 3 pillars of the rebellion, which is Mon, Bail, and Saw, is Mon is the brains of the rebellion, Bail is the heart of the rebellion, and Saw is the fist of the rebellion. Yep. And
somebody's got to be unafraid to punch Nazis, and that is Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, someone needs to be the one to take the action. It's one thing to talk about the action, it's one thing to put in place, and these are important. And I think what The Mask of Fear does really well, and I think what Andor also does really well, is show the importance. When we get Mon Mothma's speech, it is important to say these things, and you don't have to have a blaster in your hand at all times. It is important to have people that humanize these causes, without violence. There's 100% truth to that, but at the same time, words do help. They only get you so far, and that's where someone like Saw Gerrera comes in, and he's the one that makes the difficult decisions for people. And I think he's one of my favorite Star Wars characters.
I do think, though, as much as I defend Saw for not being crazy, I do think that is that final moment at the end of Arc 2 in the rain, or in the Rhino. I think that's the point where Saw is as close to having lost his mind as he's going to get. Like, I definitely think he's, and we see it over the next 2 years as we get to part 4. I think we can see that, like, paranoia takes over, and it's probably because of the drugs. Like, it's probably why he is so different by the time we get to Rogue One, is from years of being dosed, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. I think that should had it ended differently. Like Luthen would have probably been driven down a similar path had he not been found out. Like he probably would have gone crazy as well.
But I
It's
like
that
the
like
idea that I do like the idea that it gives us a reason for why Saw is so markedly different, though. Like
yeah.
he's always been, angry, and he's always been
There's
the revolutionary. But like we can see that like this is not like Rido's not just like he's not smoking a little pot on the weekend. Like
Oh my God! Did you see the people that were reposting the SNL episode with when Felicity Jones hosted?
no.
So Felicity Jones when Rogue One was coming out, she hosted SNL, and like during her monologue, Kenan Thompson comes out dressed as Saw Gerrera, and he's got the mask, and he's like, and Felicity Jones like, "What's in that?" He's like, "Wouldn't you like to know?" And like it's so perfect that it lines up now, like just little skit of like he's up in gasoline, baby.
Basically. But I mean I do like the idea though that I mean even if it were as a painkiller kind of thing, like it makes sense. But I do think it was important because it was important to finally really show the delineation between Clone Wars Saw and Rogue One Saw.
And like I like his arc, and you're right, like he is markedly different, from Clone Wars to Bad Batch to Andor to Rogue One. Like there's a progression there, and he is losing his mind a little bit. He is going a little bit crazy.
It's my sister.
Yeah, it's
yeah. That's I think
that's Stila.
Yeah,
that's how he feels.
Like that's what it all comes down to, though. Is he's never been the same since she died.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think like the last thing about Arc 2 is the stuff with Vel and Cinta that like is the most impactful, because obviously Cinta does not make it out of the Gorman heist because people don't listen to her and people don't listen to Vel.
We also didn't talk about R.I.P. Brasso in the first act.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I was like, is she the first major death of this season? I was like, no, we lost Brasso too.
Brasso going is really sad. But it's one of those things, like I do enjoy how they handle death in this season. It feels, and almost every time it feels real and sudden. And with both Brasso and Cinta, like there is a moment of just like when that blaster goes off on Gorman, and you're just like, it hit Cinta. Like I knew it. Like immediately, I was like, that hit Cinta. And it's like it's a person who did everything right and played by the book and truly believed in the cause. And we see this even in season 1 in Aldhani, and like when Vel is hesitating on the radio and Cinta is like, you have to do this. I can't do this for you. You have to do this. And how the rebellion both brings them together and separates them, and it's like a beautiful story. I love Cinta. There's a scene in the cafe that's like so beautifully framed, where Vel has been feeling like she's being undercut, and Cinta is being sent on job after job after job, and there's like this window that has like this S curve. It looks like a yin yang, and the way that Vel and Cinta are framed is Cinta is standing and Vel is sitting, and they're framed in the mirror by the S curve. And it's just something just like we don't get in Star Wars, like basically ever. Just like visual storytelling like that. And I don't like the fact that she died, but it's made up by Vel in the transport, and like her speech, the "you're not allowed to cry" speech, is my favorite one in the show, like by far. Like she will be mourned in ways you will never understand. And like you will live the rest of your miserable life not even understanding that. And like the thing that I love Luthen's speech and I love Saw's speech, but like Luthen's feels a little Shakespearean and very much rehearsed, and Vel's feels very organic and very emotional and very raw. And I've always said, like, if we were to get one F word in Star Wars, this was the time to say it.
You don't get to fucking cry.
You don't get to fucking cry. Because we get shit a lot in the show. But no, like that scene to me, I was like, I can't believe they did that. There's kind of like a harmful trope with the bury your gaze trope that was going on with that. But like, to me personally, the speech and the transport like makes up for it. Like the impact and meaning behind it makes up for it. Like, full stop.
One thing that I will say is I think my takeaway from this whole show, and it starts here and it's hammered in part 4 when Luthen gives his speech again to Clea when she's young. We lose. We lose and we lose and we lose and we lose until we find our time, and then we win. And that's what it is with Cinta, is like, it's just another proof, like, through action, they're showing, not telling, that every victory we have comes at a cost. Yep. Like, this is the one big win that they have in this season is the Gorman heist. And what happens? We still lost someone. We couldn't get out of that unscathed. And I think that that's a really important lesson. It's an important lesson for us, the audience, and for anyone living through times of rebellion, that you will not simply win. And it's a life lesson as well. You will never simply win. There will always be something.
Yeah, and another theme of the show in general with all the characters is sacrifice. And we get this in Luthen's speech in season 1, like, what do you sacrifice? And Luthen sacrifices everything. And he certainly does in season 2. But I think that what is it's done with such care is, even when it comes to Partagaz and Cyril and Dedra, like our villains or our antagonists is what I would probably use for someone like Cyril Karn. Like, I don't view Cyril Karn as a villain. He's an antagonist. Dedra Miro, and Partagaz is, again, like a little bit of a villain, but is more of an antagonist. I think your Krennics are your true villains.
We're splitting hairs. We're splitting hairs with the distinction.
Sure,
I agree.
Sure.
Antagonist is more correct.
I don't believe that Cyril Karn is an evil person. I don't believe that his actions were driven by hatred for other people. I think he always truly, in his heart of hearts, believed he was doing the right thing.
I don't think he had evil intentions. I will give you that. Where I say it's splitting hairs is where I say it's nuanced, is like the idea that, it's the fallen stars of it all. Once you know how horrible the Empire is, can you stay in the Empire and be a good person? But excluding that broad morality of it, I agree with you that, like, I don't think Cyril has, like, evil intentions.
Right. He believes he's doing the right thing, and he's doing it because he believes. Yeah, he believes that he's good. But even them, like, there is a level of sacrifice. Cyril and Dedra are sacrificing their relationship for Gorman. And like at the end with Partagaz, like, he fails and his sacrifice is his own life. And when it comes to Cassian and Bix and Vel and Mon and Perrin, all of these characters sacrifice something in this show, and some of it's bigger and some of it's smaller. Like, Cinta sacrifices her life, and Vel sacrifices love, for the rebellion, because she loses Cinta, and I think it's so. What I love about this cast of characters is, especially on the Rebel side, is the conviction. Is that, like, you see Cassian struggle with the rebellion throughout this show, and everyone else around him is only, as things progress, they are only more invested in the rebellion, and I love that dynamic between the ensemble cast as well, versus Cassian, and yeah, I just, like, man, it's there's so much to talk about, and I know we don't have all the time in the world to talk
I
about it.
know,
But
and I'm trying to hit the major parts real quick.
yeah,
Like the Gorman massacre. So weirdly enough, I will say with the Gorman massacre, they mentioned it within Arc 3 too, right? That because there's two Gorman massacres, kind of like
yes,
the one with
there's the Tarkin massacre and then the Gorman massacre.
and like that's a weird distinction, but I don't think about it too hard because I don't think it's too big of a deal. But it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's just like here's how I look at that is your average person watching Star Wars does not know about this. Like they don't know about, and like we've never seen the Gorman massacre, right?
Yeah.
It's just referenced in like Rebels, basically. And this is the thing of it's just like yes, we like you said like what was said about antagonists and villains, like we could split hairs. I think it's important that they do reference it and say like this isn't the first time something like this has happened on Gorman. But yeah, I'm glad they added context to the Tarkin massacre, and I think it's probably easier just to distinguish them between the two because I think it's one of those things like
I think
the Tarkin massacre.
I think you could have included it, but then we would have had to have the conversation about what to do with Tarkin. Like if we could have had it be the same Gorman massacre, but then we would have had do we CGI him like we did in Rogue One, or do we recast him? Speaking of recasts, because he's in Part 2 and Part 4 and I think 3. What did you think about Benjamin Bratt as
He did a
Bail
great
Organa?
job. He really did a good job.
I didn't expect it. I
didn't expect it either.
I've never seen Benjamin Bratt in such a like quiet, like a reserved role, and it was kind of perfect. I kind of loved it.
He did a really good job. I understand like Hollywood is a very busy space and scheduling conflicts occur. I would have loved to see Jimmy Smits come back, but Benjamin Bratt really did a good job. Like
let this be the moment that spurns Star Wars to encourage recasts for actors. That's my big hope, is that enough people will just like not mention it or not be problematic about it that we can actually look at like recasting Luke, Leia, and Han if we want to make, more.
I mean Leia and Han have already been recast. It's really just Luke at this point that needs to be recast. And there's plenty of discussions out there on who's the best to do it, and that's a discussion for another time. But like no, I think that Benjamin did a really good job with Bail. It felt like Bail. He had the emotion, he had the care of the rebellion, and I think that Benjamin Bratt did a really good job of portraying that in a way that I know that Jimmy Smits would have also done. So I'm very happy with how he did it and how it worked out. Like I'm glad he was able to be a part. I'm glad that Bail was able to be a part of the story of Cassian Andor.
I will say one thing I didn't realize until I was thinking about it watching Rogue One. This show pulled a Clone Wars, and I didn't realize it. Throughout Clone Wars, we had to keep Grievous from meeting Anakin, right? We also kept Saw from meeting Cassian. And I didn't realize it until I was watching it. I was like, oh yeah, Saw and Cassian. Because he's there in that scene at the end where Saw is a hollow, but it's hard to tell exactly how much of the room he can see. Like, can he see Cassian? But other than that, they've never like had any actual interaction before Rogue One. I just thought that was kind of cool.
I know we've talked about it a lot. Like, there's a lot of care that went into this show. There's a really good TikTok that I saw that was like from an actor who was kind of like an extra. He was like an Imperial officer on Mina Rao. I don't know if you saw that video, but he was basically talking about how well done all of the sets were. Like, the drawers were full of props, and it's like these are things that are never going to be on camera. But the amount of detail that went into everything, so that when you walked on set, and they yelled action, you didn't have to put yourself in this scene. You were there. And that so obviously some things, like a TIE fighter flying overhead, like they can't make a TIE fighter fly. They can certainly, like, the Avenger's real. Like, that's a real thing. Like, they built the TIE Avenger, and it was both on Sayonara and Mina Rao. And the guy was like, yeah, I snuck onto the TIE Avenger. It was really cool because all the buttons clicked and lit up and stuff like that. But I think that just, like, goes to the whole point of, like, everything was handled with so much care with this show. From, like you said, like the whole, like, Cassian can't meet Saw because the first time they're supposed to meet is in Rogue One. And yeah, I just, like, man.
And speaking of the way it all ties together, I watched, after finishing episode 9, so the last episode of the third arc, I watched Rebels 318, which is the episode where they deliver Mon Mothma to Dantooine, not to Yavin, but to Yavin. But here's the thing, it doesn't line up 100%. Like, you have to give it a little break, but it's not a big fucking deal. Like, it's not a big deal, and it does work really well because, like, Erskine, I didn't realize, like, her adjunct, her right hand man, is in Rebels right next to her getting on the Ghost, and I was like, oh fuck, I wouldn't have even pegged that was the same character as the guy with her in Andor. I never pegged that. It fits timeline wise, where she gives the speech in the Senate, they leave, they land in the next spot, she gives another speech, then she gets on the Ghost. The second speech that she gives there is the speech that we see in Rebels. Like, it kind of makes sense. Like,
yeah, I don't think it ruins. It doesn't ruin Rebels or an arc of Rebels. It
nothing
only adds
will ever
to
ruin
it.
Rebels.
No, Rebels is too good. But it's one of those things that, like, talking about that, like, the Gorman massacre, which, wow, similar to the scene with Bix on Mina Rao, like, I'm surprised they went as far as they did with a lot of this stuff. One of the most interesting things to me that, like, I didn't even think about, but I was talking to people about, was whenever we see the Empire do something really bad, it's usually a very powerful person. It's usually Emperor Palpatine or Darth Vader or Grand Moff Tarkin or Admiral Thrawn or Admiral Sloane. It's usually a person of power doing the nasty things for the Empire. And in this, it is the whole catalyst of the Gorman Massacre is no-named sniper number 2. And like, I knew how, I was like, when they had the snipers up and they were making the calls, I was like, he's going to shoot an Imperial. He's going to make it seem like someone shot, the Gorman shot. And I was like, and pulled the trigger.
It's and I was so good.
And it's one of those things, like, sure, you could be like, oh yeah, it's predictable, but I'm like, they are setting it up. Like, they're setting it up to happen.
It's so real.
Like, the reason they have recruits in there, they don't want to waste, good soldiers, is because they're planning on all of these people dying.
And if people are old enough or have studied enough, if you remember learning about Tiananmen Square when we were little, this was very similar to Tiananmen Square. That's the big one.
There's a lot to the Gorman Massacre. That's like one. This also is very much like the Kent State shooting.
Yeah.
There's stuff obviously with the French Revolution, and obviously the Gormans themselves are a direct comparison to the French underground resistance in World War II. You also have stuff with Israel and Palestine going on here. The barricades, to me, the barricades closing in and closing in and closing in is very much just the West Bank border, just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And yeah, like the Gorman massacre is very violent, and it is a violence that we really to a level of violence we really haven't seen much of on screen, if that makes sense. Like, yes, we've had lightsabers and limbs getting cut off, but like there are moments in the Gorman massacre where you see this is like I know it's a meme of like stormtroopers are inaccurate, but the stormtroopers are very deadly in the Gorman massacre. Like they account for a lot of the deaths in the Gorman massacre. Um, and then when the KX droids come in, and there's just like this is the thing that like not to harp on annoying fans, but like when people are like, oh, I want a dark and gritty Star Wars, and I'm just like, yeah, the Acolyte had like the first neck snap in Star Wars, and it wasn't like a gentle one, it's a loud crack that you hear with Yord. And when I can't remember her name, but the KX droid picks up like the daughter and throws her to the ground, and you hear her head crunch onto the concrete, and it's just like, oh. And maybe to pivot and segue into Cyril and Dedra in this, we've never seen someone shot in the head in Star Wars. And Cyril is shot in the head. Like, and the sound, and it's crazy because like on TikTok, there's so many like reactions to Cyril's death going around, and just the blaster sound they use for Cyril when the blaster goes to his head, like it's gnarly. I don't know if you like. I want to talk about Cyril in this because
do it.
Yeah, like the I was on a podcast on its Fanbox, and like a bunch of people were talking about it, you know, the Gorman massacre after that happened, and I think there's lots of different interpretations, especially with Cyril and Dedra and stuff like that, and like Cyril. This is a person to me that is a reflection of like your alt-right pipeline lonely man that has been berated and degraded his entire life by his community and has no other outlet except a dark little secret being whispered in his ear, being the Empire. And he finds like the only sense of relief he will ever has known and will ever know in his life is Dedra Meero. And I will never be convinced that those two did not love each other to the extent of what they knew how to love. And him being brought to his breaking point, being lied to through and through about Gorman, the only person he ever cared about, lied to him. And set him up to, because he believes in truth and justice. He goes about it the wrong way, but that's what he believes in. And this is his proof. This is like the wake-up call that the thing you thought was bringing truth and justice to the galaxy was doing the exact opposite intentionally and with full conviction. And the one person you loved was the biggest part of that. And it makes him break. He's pushed past his limit, and that's why he chokes Dedra. And then he goes out into the plaza, has this moment of delirium, and it's like it's a goofy trope in movies where it's like central character has 1,000 billion bullets flying by them. It's the Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks on the beach of D-Day, just like, no bullets hit Tom Hanks, but everyone around him gets shot. It's same with him, but then he is woken up because he sees good old Cassian Andor. And I love the scene. Have you seen the movie They Live?
Mm.
It very much felt like that. The intentionally prolonged fight between them, like the hand-to-hand fight, which we really don't get in Star Wars, like, at all. We get a kick here and there. This is just two people beating the snot out of each other. And man, the line and the title episode, "Who are you?" Though this is just the whole thing about Andor, is it's just like, a character who has spent the past, I think it's 5 years since Premor,
Yeah,
maybe 6.
6, I think. Well, by
Yeah,
this point, 5.
where every single day they think about Cassian Andor and how this person getting away set them on a course that wasn't that they weren't intended for, et cetera, et cetera. And when you finally confront them, they don't. And this was on my bingo card. I was like, Cassian's gonna say, "I'm sorry, have we met before?" or something like that. And like the fact that that was the title episode, like I'm usually really bad with Star Wars predictions, but I got that one right.
There's so much to that too. Like there's so much philosophically you can take away from that moment. Like just personally, like stop hanging up on everybody and everything that you know gives you anxiety, because the chances are they don't even realize you exist. This man, like there are horrible things that this man has been privy to as part of his personal crusade to make the galaxy a better place. Like he really thought he was doing the right thing working with the Empire, and it's because of people like, you know, Cassian Andor, and then he has his whole fucking world blown up, finds out he's not part of the good guys, and then immediately runs into the motherfucker that put him on this path. And he doesn't even know who he is, because as I've said before, no one in this story is as important as we, the audience, think they are.
Yeah. And Cyril views himself as a hyper important figure in the Empire. Like, you know, when he has the conversation with Partagaz and Dedra, and, you know, he has the line like, if I say this is the most, you know, important day of my life, does that spoil it? He thinks he's going. He views himself as like a Luke. Obviously, he doesn't know who he is, but he views himself as a Luke Skywalker.
He's
like,
the main character. Yeah.
He's his own main character, and he is an NPC that thinks he's the main character. And it's so interesting how they tell that story.
You remember The Witcher 3?
I never finished it, but
okay. Would you remember there's this guy in like every town you go to who like tries to pick a fight with Geralt, and he's like,
yes.
I'm gonna win this fight for my girlfriend,
yes.
and you beat his ass every time. That's Cyril. Like, just convinced that he's the main character of this story and that what he's doing matters. And it's like, I mean, no more so than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I do love about that scene with Cyril is he dies the way his story starts. He picked and decided to harass a man with dark features, and he picked the wrong person to mess with, which is what his boss tells him about the 2 security officers on Premor. Where it's just like you got so worked up over 2 people harassing the wrong person, you decided to harass that person, and that's how you died. It's exactly how those 2 cops died, and you went out the same way. And super good writing, super good, like it's poetry, it rhymes type stuff. And on top of that, Dedra Miro, the breakdown in the comms room with Dedra Miro, I think was my favorite scene in the show. Because I talked to a couple people about it, and the one person I really want to talk to about it, because I have been talking with them about it a little bit, is Mara J. Skywalker on TikTok.
I had a feeling.
Because we had very different interpretations of that scene, and like also we had a Venn diagram where like the overlap was very big. My interpretation was 100% that she was no longer fitting within the ISB, and that's why she is tugging at her uniform, and that's why she keeps pulling it down. And what's so interesting about the finale is she's continuing to do that. She continues to keep tugging at her uniform because she doesn't fit within the ISB, and it's very evident, especially in the finale, she no longer fits, and she has outgrown her uniform in a very bad way. I was thinking she was maybe going to get a redemption, not a redemption arc, but like she was going to do. My theory was she was going to do one thing that she felt would make up for what happened on Gorman and then kill herself. And it was flipped. But no, like her breakdown in the comms room and Denise Golf, I don't know how you say her last name. She just like she doesn't need to say anything. She's very emotive with her like when she speaks, but like that scene with no dialogue, and the fact that it like talk like listen like Beth Marjorie Skywalker did do a video on it, and it was like that was 100% about Cyril. Like that was her unable to understand like her emotions of love and her emotions of caring about someone, because she's probably never felt that in her life, and it was taken from her, and that's why the breakdown happened. And I think based on the finale, I think she's more right than I was.
I think you're both right. And I think that like because that's part of it is it's her duty to the ISB versus her heart wanting to follow Cyril. Like that tugging is at the constraints of wanting to be part of that system too, even though she knows that maybe isn't the right thing to do. Like she can feel on some level that like emotionally there's a right thing to do, but she's never done that. So she's forcing herself to stay with what she knows, with what is right.
Yeah. And I think it just goes to show that like what we talked about with the other actors, like there was not a bad or stale or stiff performance from season 1 up until the finale of season 2. Like props were due. Like the actors crushed it every step of the way. Like from Dedra's breakdown to Cyril snapping to Krennic interrogating Dedra and Mon Mothma, every step of the way. Like every character was so good. Like just the performances, just like,
and
like I said, it's
I think with Cyril and with Dedra, what we see is really a common thread throughout the greatest parts of Star Wars, is that one of the greatest evils in the galaxy is ambition. Mm-hmm. Dedra wanted so desperately to be successful within the ISB. Cyril wanted to be the guy who single-handedly brought about law and order to the galaxy. Palpatine, it's his ambition to rule. Anakin, it's his ambition to be the best Jedi, to have that dominion over life and death. Like ambition gets Luthen killed for staying on Coruscant longer than he should have. And like much like Luthen has a very Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi-esque moment, in my opinion, with like everyone, Bail and Mon Mothma and all these people who don't like or agree with Luthen, all seem to imply that like he could have left and joined them sooner.
Yeah.
And like they would have let him, whether they like him or not. Yeah. They're all like, yeah, he stayed too long. And that fear of like, well, they won't accept me, so I'll just stay. But in Luthen's case, it's also specifically he's gonna be the guy who gets the information that saves the day. Now, in his case, he turns out to be right. But it is his ambition to be the guy who ends the war that gets him killed too. Yeah, he had to stay. He had to, but he got lucky. That doesn't mean it was right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, how it works out is different.
And I think that segues perfectly into episode 10, which was the oddball offshoot episode. And I'm going to say this. I don't have an issue with the Mando episodes of Book of Boba Fett. I actually enjoy those episodes. This was executed way better. in Andor season. Like this was the episode about Clea and Luthen. That's it. That is all episode 10 is about. And we get the backstory of Clea and Luthen and how he rescued her. And we assume he was working with the Empire at some point, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's based on how like some of the soldiers are coming in. It seems very early Empire. And like to not go super into all the details of that, like I do love the scene with Dedra and Luthen and her pulling out the rusted Starpath unit from season 1, and Luthen not even trying, like just like it all comes crumbling down as soon as she pulls that out. And here's what I loved about this is there was, while my predictions definitely didn't come true with a lot of these things, I was like, is Mon gonna kill Luthen? Because like, there's no way Luthen makes it out of season 2. Like he's gone. I knew that going into this show that Luthen wasn't gonna make it out. I really love that Luthen's death was between him and Clea. He started it. He stabbed himself with the bleeder, the Aquilian bleeder, I think is what it was. It was on his terms, and this is what I you can make some parallels of how like a lot of people under Luthen didn't make it out on their own terms, and he was the one that was able to make the choice. And
Lonnie.
like you can say, yeah, like Lonnie, Nemec, Gorn, because you do get Vel and Cassian, toasting to everyone, which is that was heartbreaking. Then they forgot Brasso. But no, like the fact that Luthen was able to do it on his own terms, and they try to keep him alive, and then the whole, again, the tension of the show of Clea sneaking through the hospital, which is Lena So Memorial. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah,
that was really cool. But Clea coming into the hospital room where Luthen was, and then turning the space blinds is all I can call them. That was hard to watch. Like probably one of the hardest things to watch. Like her disconnecting, I was like
support.
when she was going into the hospital, I was like, she's gonna kill him. Like she believes in the cause so much, and she loves Luthen. Again, this is that unconventional love. Like that's not her father, but it's the closest thing she has. And
found family, baby. It's always got to find a way into Star Wars.
Well, he is not a rail.
We wonder. Neither is he. He's a Lear.
Yeah, he's a Lear.
I heard that, and I was like, does that mean his first name is like Nethel?
You know what I was thinking about when they said Lear? I was like, this is Avner from the Revan novel. It's like, how did they not figure this out sooner?
That's some Ben Kenobi level disguise right there. Oh, that's always been my favorite. Like,
yeah, we have reports of this guy Ben Kenobi on Tatooine.
He's related to Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Don't kill him. No,
just
the
Jedi's having last names doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, trillions of beings. Someone's got to have the same last name as Kenobi.
I'm just saying, if they take them in as kids and they cut them off from their family, why do they give them their last name?
George Lucas doesn't think that far ahead. George Lucas is now Tony Gilroy. Anyway, the fact there's no dialogue, I think, is what really, really hurt, in like a good way, and made it emotional. But when she's going into the hospital, I was like, she's going to kill Luthen. She's not rescuing him. she can't rescue him. She's not going to get it out. She's not going to be able to get him out. He's dying. And so I'm like, while she's making, and God, she's such a badass. She has the best walk in Star Wars as well. Just the most confident and sure-hearted and just swagger of a walk.
I don't know where she continues, but we win. Like, they win because of her. Something Clea does within the rebellion is why they win. I don't know if she tweaked Luke's X-wing or something, but like she's got butterfly effect written all over her.
Yeah, and that scene was, like I said, it was really hard to watch, and I think it was done so beautifully. I enjoyed that the death of Luthen was between them. I enjoyed that. I think that was a good send-off for his character because he was such an impactful character from season 1 into season 2. And the fact that they have a moment together, and the kiss on the forehead, just like the painful teary cherry on top. But yeah, I really enjoyed episode 10. Like, to me it was a standout episode. It really was.
I loved it too, and I also love that. Speaking of Dedra and Cyril, notice that the deaths of the Imperial aligned people, their deaths they're either non-ceremonial, like Cyril just boom dies and we move on. We move on and we never fucking talk about him again, basically.
Yeah.
Like, he dies in the dirt and it's over. His story is fucking done. And I think that's so perfect. But like, he just dies in the dirt. Dedra goes on to be in prison for probably the rest of her life. And
people don't make it out of Narkina unless they do a prison break.
But meanwhile, look at the importance placed on the deaths of Cinta, of Luthen, of the people that, Brasso, the people
Brasso
that we
is
know
it's held by Cassian.
Yeah, like all of their deaths matter. And I feel like there's something poetic to like, how do you know if you were on the right side of history with your life? It's in the way people celebrate your death, or like the people react to your death,
Yeah, and I know like we haven't talked a lot, and it's funny, I think some people have criticized the show, but we haven't really talked a lot about Cassian. And it is his show, and while I stand by it is his show 100%, and like also the way that Ahsoka is still Ahsoka's show. Yes, there is an ensemble cast that gets a lot of screen time. I really do love in season 2, I love the arc of Cassian Andor of on the razor's edge of, does he continue with the rebellion? Does he retire and try and live a peaceful life? And like how Bix departs from Cassian, which is so beautiful, like the end of the Gorman massacre arc with Bix leaving, and not leaving him, just going away so that he can stay with the rebellion because she's what's holding him back. And
if that is his baby, we know now that she kind of did what Padme couldn't, in the sense that she took her ball and went home. Like, she said, you are more important than this. You have a purpose that she truly believes in. And she let him go. Like, now we see with that baby, the only logical assumption is that that's Cassian's baby. And if she left with his kid and was like, it's the joke that we all have about Corky Kenobi. The idea that your role is more important than raising this kid. So I'm going to go take this kid and raise them so that you can be the important person that you need to be. And, like, that's what we always said about Corky Kenobi, but that's what we can really pretty well ascribe to their situation. And the idea that Bix is protecting the galaxy by leaving him, in her mind.
And I love the subtle reference to to Chirrut in Rogue One with the Force healer of, she says that he's a messenger, and it's like, no, he's not a Jedi. He's not gonna force push anyone off of a cliff. He's not gonna move things with his mind. He doesn't get a lightsaber. But like, he's an important character in the Force, and he is, the Force is moving around him to help bring that balance and restore the balance. And I love the fact that, like, it's not just Darth Vader throwing Palpatine over a railing to bring balance to the Force. It's so many things that need to be set in motion for that to happen. And I like that. I like that aspect, and I love the idea that, like, because Bix so firmly believes in the rebellion, and she believes the healer, and she's like, if I interfere too much with Cassian, it could mean something bad for the rest of everyone else. Like, if I am holding Cassian back, things could be worse for everyone. And she is so brave and, like, so, like, honorable and respectful, because she obviously loves Cassian with all her heart, and she is willing to make the conscious decision herself, because she says, I'm not as brave as you. And I'm like, you are so brave. Like, you deserve everything. Like I said, like, I want a big series because
I'm glad he didn't kill her. Like,
yeah,
she didn't die. Tony, go right.
Yeah. Everything she went through, from Gorst to the Imperial on Mina Rao, to what Luthen was kind of putting them through on Coruscant, like, everything she went through, she made it through, and she still had agency in her character, and Cassian was able to respect that as well. Like, he didn't go looking for her because he knew that's not what she wanted. Yeah, and I think that also plays into what Marva said about his sister, is like, just stop, like, focus on what you need to do, stop looking for your sister. And that's why he doesn't chase after Bix, is because that's not what Marva would wanted.
Fuck,
and that's
I didn't even
Bix
think
wanted.
about that.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. And I think that's him. It's just, there's so many connections, even from season 1 to season 2, and then obviously into Rogue One and A New Hope. But yeah, like, I love the arc of Cassian Andor in this show. I think he has, it's crazy, like, what we talked about when we first started this was, he's become so important.
Cassian is, in my opinion, the perfect audience insert protagonist. Mm-hmm. He is the perfect, like, protagonist for this series, because he doesn't really want to be there. He, like, things happen to Cassian more than Cassian makes them happen. Yeah. And, like, I feel like we all kind of feel that way in life. And he's constantly bumbling around. There's a need for exposition. And again, I've said it multiple times, he's not important. He's no more important than anybody else. And I feel like that is so, central
there is a level. I think there is a level of importance to Cassian, and I think, like what I said with the Force healer and Chirrut making comments about how the Force moves through Cassian. I think there is a level of importance, but I think maybe to your point is that it doesn't have to be a Luke Skywalker or Rey or Anakin.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's like he plays
you are
a central part.
You're the ultimate Force user.
No, like, she even says, she says he's a messenger, and of course, what does he do? He delivers a message. That's literally his his dying moment, and the most important thing possibly in all of Star Wars is him delivering. That's what
Jyn Erso says to him, is, do you think people are listening?
It's like
I think they do. I think they are.
I get that he is important on that, but what I suppose the word I should be using is unremarkable.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it.
That's the better word. He is the everyman. We don't have a lot of everyman stories within Star Wars. And especially when we're talking about the Empire, when we're talking about resisting the fascist regime, and we've taken by design, taken the laser swords and the superpowers mostly out of the story, and we put you in a story about just a bunch of random people with a bunch of unremarkable people just getting by. Like, no one knows who the waiter that served the last meal to the assassin that killed Franz Ferdinand that set off World War I. No one knows the story of those people. You know, the driver who drove him there, you know, the guy who checked his coat at the hotel, kind of thing. This is the story about those people. And the reminder, reminder that you are those people. We are those people.
I mean, it's funny you talk about the hotel, because the front desk guy at the hotel on Gorman makes a difference. Like, he makes a difference.
Rebellions are built on hope.
When he has that, and I love that he keeps that thing on him. He just has a grenade underneath the counter. But the thing is he's the one who opens the way for the Gore to leave. That explosion opens a hole in the barricade, and he's the reason that it happens. And it is like a seemingly insignificant person. And that's what I love about Andor. Is, you're right, is anyone could be Andor. You don't need ultimate force abilities. You don't need to be the highest ranking of, you know, your military, whatever, super soldier, Call of Duty, Gears of War man. Like, it can just be a regular person. And yeah, I think that the kind of, maybe to close it out, the final montage of this show was beautiful. Like, Dedra in prison, Partagaz. May I have a moment to collect my the way that Partagaz just says the most basic things. Thesis, please. I just, may I have a moment to collect my thoughts? And it's like, not that, like, this show does such a good job of humanizing without condoning the Empire. And I forget the guy's name. The other guy that's like kind of like the same rank as him, that's beckoning him to.
Oh yeah, the balding guy.
Yeah, and he knows exactly what's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And I love the, like.
Mm-hmm. He gives it a second.
You know, when they hear the blaster shot, and he's like, "There's no need to go in."
Yeah.
There, you know what's crazy is there's just so, like I talked about, like the coat with Vel and Cinta. There's just so many little things about this show that carry so much emotional weight. Like, when we see Dedra, like, I was like, okay, Dedra didn't kill herself, and I was like, she's in trouble. And I was like, she's not going to go to the... Everyone that I was talking to said she's going to go to the Death Star. Like, she's going to get put on the Death Star, and that's going to be her fate. When they show her from that, like, down diagonal shot, and, like, you see the Narkina stripe.
Orange, yep.
And I'm just like, I was like, oh my God. Like, the least... I don't know anyone that was predicting that, and that is such a fitting end to a character like her. And when she stood up, I was like, "Oh, am I going to be right? Is she going to step on the floor?" And you know, we don't see it. She just kind of readjusts in her bunk. But like, I did love when Melshi is doing the march. That's Rogue One. That's all of Rogue One.
Yeah. Which, speaking of Rogue One really fast, the one thing I do laugh about is it works masterfully with one thing that you have to, like, accept, and that is something that you see throughout Andor, which is people pretending not to know stuff in order, like the rebels specifically will pretend not to know things to goad people into telling them information. Like, how much do you know about this? Because the last part of this show has them figuring out about the Death Star, and the opening of Andor after the Galen Erso stuff has them going, there's a what? There's a weapon? How many people know about this? And you just have to assume that Bail, Mon Mothma, Davrin, and Cassian are all just kind of going, supposedly there's this weapon, because he does ask Vivek, he's like, who else knows about this? Which makes sense when you're like, okay, he's playing him. And then they bring in Jin, and it's like, oh, well, they wouldn't trust Jin anyway. So why not play a little stupid, because maybe she knows something they don't because of her dad. Like, it adds a little more nuance to those few scenes that originally were just, what? There's a Death Star? Oh no,
Yeah.
a Death Star.
Yeah, I think it's also a little bit of we've lived with the Death Star for almost 50 years. That comes into play of like it's hard to believe. There's a really good documentary about Rogue One and its comparisons to J. Robert Oppenheimer, and how Galen Erso is Oppenheimer in a lot of ways. And it is one of those things like there is a hush hush on every side about this, because there's almost an, I think for a lot of characters within Star Wars there's a disbelief, like this is like oh, I can't remember the name, the woman that wears the hood, that's with the rebellion and like the council, it's like there is like, you understand how crazy this sounds, right? That like they're putting this much effort into a single weapon. What is this weapon capable of? Like, what are we even talking about here? And I think that carrying into Rogue One, and I will probably be watching Rogue One tonight, and then maybe A New Hope after that, because yeah, I genuinely believe that this has become its own saga.
Yeah. The age of the Empire is officially like a legitimate era of Star Wars. It's not just like for a long time these were the Jesus years, like for Vader, where it's like we just didn't really know what happened in this gap, and now we do.
I think and I'm excited to go watch it, because like I'm just playing through the movies in my head, you know, because I've seen them so many times. Is when we look at like how small scale Andor is in season 1, episode 1, with like it's just a guy looking for his sister. That's it. It's a man looking for his sister, and everything goes wrong while he's doing it, and it sets him on this path and this journey, and that journey continues to expand into season 2. We start to learn about the Force a little bit in Andor. And then when you get into Rogue One, you even get a little bit more taste of the Force with Chirrut. And like I have to imagine that, like, I know that TV shows are long and hard to get through, because this is like 8 whole movies, and if we're being real with Andor,
it's 4 movies. I would say it's 4 long movies.
Yeah. And I think the saga of what happens in season 1, culminating to Cassian was building something on Narkina, and then in season 2 you start to learn that there's this thing called the Death Star, and then in Rogue One you learn that the Death Star is real and you see what it's capable of, and then the finale is a young boy who has this thing called the Force very much within him, and there is someone who seems to know a lot more about the Force than we have ever known, and it ends with the destruction of the Death Star. That is a perfect saga. That, like, beginning to end, like from Andor season 1, episode 1 to the end of A New Hope, is a fully complete story and saga, and like you may not need anything else after that. Yeah. Like, I love Empire Strikes Back. Like, I love that movie. And, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Return of the Jedi, but I still love it. And, like, I like the sequels and I like the prequels. I think the best Star Wars is Andor to A New Hope. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Like, I really do. I really do see that.
The best, most complete, most cohesive story.
Meanwhile, I just want to run around with a t-shirt, with a sign, with whatever. I think the 504 or 501st needs to start adopting Thrawn was right as like propaganda banners and stuff, because Thrawn's just watching all of Andor, Rogue One, and just going, if y'all would have fucking listened.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there because
Yeah.
as we wrap it up, I gotta throw in the Defender Project was right.
Yeah. Thrawn's a smart dude. He gets things right from time to time.
Meanwhile, I do find it's awkward as hell. They've just made Thrawn's existence in canon even more awkward, adding more to this era.
Yeah. It's, that being said, he was always messy in Heir to the Empire. Like, there's
one of these days we're gonna talk about Thrawn, just Thrawn, because I have opinions, and they're related to Rogue One. I like Thrawn. I don't like Dave Filoni's Thrawn.
I don't dislike it. I think like in Rebels he's good.
Listen, I gave up on Dave Filoni. This will be my closing thought. I gave up on Dave Filoni understanding Thrawn when he said "for the Empire" at the end of Ahsoka or whatever. Like, that was enough for me to be like, oh, okay, it's a cool antagonist.
Yeah, he is.
It is,
but he is for the ascendancy first.
There is no nuance to Dave Filoni's Thrawn. He is just a mustache twirling villain, and a cool one. Like, the idea of like resurrecting the Empire is a cool villain. It's just sad that there's two variations. But anyway,
yeah. Timothy's on Thrawn versus Filoni.
It was kind of weird not seeing Tarkin. I just see X-Core bringing up Tarkin. I'm bringing up these other people. It was kind of weird not to see, but I guess it works because we see Tarkin in Rogue One.
Yeah, like no Jyn mention or like Felicity Jones not being here was like a slight disappointment. Like, not even mentioning Wobani. Like not a like, when you're done with Kafrene, we need you on Wobani. Like, you need to go from Kafrene to Wobani. Like, would have been.
It makes perfect sense for Tarkin not to appear in Andor, because Krennic is also just a dude. And I think because I love Krennic so much as a character, and I love Catalyst, I forget that Krennic is also, and I love Treason. Like, I just like Krennic. He's just a dude, just like Cyril Karn and everybody else. He's not Grand Moff Tarkin, and that's the point. And I just realized that Tarkin coming in and just taking his baby and running away with it, it's just the same shit that happens to Cyril, to Dedra. Like, it's just another nobody who, again, we the audience ascribe this importance to, because convention has told us that he's important, but really unremarkable once again, just like everyone else.
Yeah, but I think that's what these stories that have intertwined throughout Andor are beyond exceptional, and I feel like I can confidently say I genuinely feel this is the best Star Wars we've gotten in 40 years since Empire Strikes Back. Like, I think there's no contest. I think there's been very good Star Wars since then. I love the prequels. I love the sequels. I love a lot of the Disney Plus though. I like a lot of Clone Wars, not a ton of it. There have been good video games, good books, bad games, but like, there's been good stuff along the way. I genuinely believe that Andor is the best thing since Empire Strikes Back came out.
I agree, and I will say my final thought is the same. It's that this is the most in line with A New Hope, with Star Wars, that we've ever gotten as a project. I feel like Star Wars has been a lot of wonderful things. We've told a lot of really cool stories, but this idea of the everyman fighting the fascist regime. You know, you don't have to be remarkable to be important. Luke Skywalker was not a remarkable person before the discovery that he was, that he was special. Like he was
a
just
moisture farmer.
just a moisture farmer on a desert planet, and the original trilogy taught you that anybody could be special. Anybody could be a Jedi. We didn't have midichlorians. We didn't have, trials or anything. Anybody could be a Jedi. And there was something magical about that. Anybody could be the hero. And that's a great lesson for children. Andor takes that same lesson and grows it up and reminds you anyone can be a rebel. Anyone can be a revolutionary. Anyone can be a hero. No matter how remarkable you may start out, and you may finish unremarkable, but you can still have an impact by going out there and choosing to do the right thing, by having hope.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't want to end on like a down note. I know a lot of people have kind of had the narrative of like, oh, am I going to enjoy Star Wars after Andor? And I'm like, of course. Like, I think that Star Wars can be goofy. I think that Star Wars can be fun and campy. I think it can have its ups and downs. I always tell people, like, don't ever forget, before we got Empire Strikes Back, we got the holiday special. Like, don't ever forget that. Depending on where you lie and in the fandom, some people really love Return of the Jedi more than Empire Strikes Back. And I think it's important that every piece of Star Wars is someone's favorite Star Wars. And every piece of Star Wars is someone's least favorite Star Wars. And I think that, I think the next thing we're getting is, I believe, Maul Shadow Lord. Or maybe it's Vision Season 3, I can't remember. But like the next live action thing confirmed is Mandalorian and Grogu, and I'm not expecting the nuanced level of storytelling. I'm not expecting the weight and impact of emotional thing. I am expecting a super fun adventure, and I'm excited to see that super fun adventure. And I genuinely hope that Lucasfilm and Disney learn a lesson from Andor of that these types of stories with this amount of care are meaningful to people, and they do well. Like Andor is doing very well as a show, and are worth making. And I hope they bring in more people with talent similar to what Tony Gilroy has, and they bring in actors like Genevieve and Adria and Denise, and they continue to work with very talented people. And I hope we do get more stories that have the same scale and weight that Andor has. And I think you can have that, with the Jedi and the Sith. I think you can have that with, like a Lost in Space style story. It doesn't have to be the Rebellion versus the Empire every time, But even if we get a goofy or a not as good Star Wars, next year or this year, that's okay. It's totally okay. Like, I love the prequels. Prequels weren't as good as the originals.
And the beauty of this project, just like a lot of things, is it will always exist.
Yeah, you can always come back to it.
As will your favorite parts of Star Wars. So if this is your favorite part, awesome. If it's not, cool. Go enjoy your favorite parts, and pray that nothing ever gets the Willow treatment again on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Hey, look, Star Wars Connect did not prevent me from going back and watching the original trilogy. Like, I can still watch it. Any time I want, I can watch A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and have a really good time. Like, if one piece of media ruins another piece of media for you, that's on you. Maybe talk to someone about that.
Man, I'm just thinking how all these people say that, Return of the Jedi, you know, like, oh, there's only 6 movies. Star Wars ends at Return of the Jedi. Let's just end Star Wars at A New Hope. That's our controversial hot take.
Yeah.
End it at A New Hope, and it's even better. It's
peaked.
even better.
I've been saying that for years. Star Wars peaked when it started.
Like I said, Darth Vader dies. If you just close your eyes, he gets yeeted off and he's dead. Like,
yeah,
story over. Like,
A New Hope ends.
It's the only Star Wars project with an ending.
And here's what's so great about A New Hope. That when you look at again, I'll call it the Death Star saga, like I said at the beginning. You watch Andor, you watch Rogue One, you watch New Hope. That is a complete storyline. There's more if you want it. Because, like, hey, we didn't see Darth Vader die, but he's not in a good place. We could see where that story goes. That's Empire Strikes Back. Do you want to see more about the Force that you saw in A New Hope and was mentioned? Well, you could go to the prequels.
Is it wrong that part of me is like, there probably exists a world where Empire Strikes Back came out with a different villain than Darth Vader? And
probably.
And imagine, like, I mean, think about, like, the prequels. There's, like, a different villain in each of those movies. You know, like, that feels like a George Lucas thing to do. Can you imagine if George had gotten rid of Vader? Wow.
He probably thought about it. He's a weird dude. But no, like, I think you're right. Like, this is a great saga, Andor. So special. Can't say enough good things. Any of my critiques are nitpicks and inconsequential to the actual narrative of the story. Like, how did they not shut down all transportation off of Gorman? How did Cassian get off of Gorman?
How did Cassian get out of Coruscant? Like, that's another. I'm like, we really
not any of this stuff.
We really kind of stretched the main character immunity on that one.
Right. Sure. It's fine. Like, these are small nitpicks that would not make for good storytelling if you focused on the air traffic control systems of Coruscant and Gorman. Like, it's just like, you're just gonna have to bypass it. It's the same reason of, like, how did characters go for so long without eating, peeing, or pooping? Like, just don't worry about it. Is what it is. But no, like, the complaints I have about Andor are the most subtle nitpicks of, like, that's so interesting that wasn't addressed. And nothing is.
I will tell you, my hope is to look back in, I would say less than, but we'll say 10 years, to look back on Andor and be like, oh man, you remember when we were living through this and this show was new, and now look at our hopeful future.
Yeah.
That's my hope, is that
what Star Wars gonna look like in 10 years? What show is gonna come out that enrages, the neuronet, and just causes all sorts of drama, and then it's just like, and people will go back, hey, people are, what's gonna happen is they're gonna release a new set of movies, and they're gonna be like, oh, why can't we just go back to the sequel trilogy? Ugh. That's what's gonna happen. So.
And on that note, I do think we both keep trying to pull ourselves toward an ending. So I'm going to say, go live your life. Have a great day, Chase. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to cut you free. Everybody, thank you for hanging out, for contributing to the conversation. I always appreciate you guys. Do you have anything else you want to say?
If you haven't seen Andor and you stayed through all these spoilers, you should go watch Andor. And if you liked Andor and you want more, read The Mask of Fear. It is a great companion piece to Andor.
Yeah, really read The Mask of Fear, read Catalyst. Read Rebel Rising. Hell, read oh god.
Rogue One novelization.
Yeah. What's the Leia Princess of Alderaan?
I haven't read that. I need to read that one.
Oh, that one's so good. But I won't launch into how good that one is. It is very good though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Chase, as always. Thank you everybody for hanging out.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys next week.
No.
Oh no, we will not see
gone.
you next week. We will not see you next Wednesday. We will be on hiatus next Wednesday. Perhaps I will find someone else, but it also depends on me too. There's a lot going on next week. So we will see you when the Force wills that we see you again. Bye-bye now.